Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Wednesday, June 14th, 2006. We are here in City Council Chambers, also known as John Ferraro Council Chambers, in room 340 of City Hall. Welcome to our viewers on Channel 35, which broadcasts us live each council meeting on LA City View, your city channel, and we are also rebroadcast in the evenings on Channel 35 as well. For those who are not close to a television, but near a computer, you can always go to our city's homepage at lacity.org and catch a webcast, a live streaming video and audio of our council proceedings. While you're at lacity.org, you can also learn a wealth of information about our city departments, our city government, our council committees, and various elected officials. It's also a great place to find out information for constituent services, and you can always call 311 for non-emergency calls for services in your neighborhood. We are also available to be listened to through Council Phone, which can be called at 213-621-CITY to listen to the proceedings of the City Council as well as also the committees of the City Council too. We invite folks to come down here for general public comment on items that are not agendized but are nevertheless under our jurisdiction. And there are certain items in each of our agendas that are put there for public comment, and folks are welcome to come here as well and be heard before the council. If you live closer to Van Nuys City Hall is available for testimony via remote, and we are able to watch that here in council chambers downtown. Each Friday, the first Friday of each month, we also have council meetings in the Van Nuys City Hall, so we invite folks to join us there too. We now have 8 members. Thank you to council members Cardenas, Gruhl, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Rosendahl, Smith, and myself, Councilmember Garcetti, who are here pursuant to council rules on time. We have 2 council members we are still awaiting to constitute a quorum, or 2/3 of our 15 members. And so I'd make one last quorum call to Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Huizar, Councilmember Perry, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Weiss, and Councilmember Wesson. Councilmember Zion is excused today. We do not expect him in council chambers. He's excused for city business. So please come down again, Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Huizar, Councilmember Perry, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Weiss, and Councilmember Wesson. We're now late, and we need a quorum to begin the meeting. Thank you. Thank you again, council members Cardenas, Gruhl, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry. We now have a quorum. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Huizar, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zion, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Wesson moves, Mr. Padilla seconds. If there's no objection, those minutes are unanimously approved. Next item.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Smith moves, and I will second. If there's no objection, those 2 are unanimously approved. Next order of business.
Mr. President, now would be time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
Okay. We will first go to Van Nuys. We have Bruce Darien out in Van Nuys. If we can establish our link with him, and then we'll come here to City Hall. We have a few comment cards here for public testimony as well. Mr. Darien, go ahead.
Yeah, City Council, thank you. My name is Bruce Darien. I'm here to discuss once again the corruption around the Malibu Pier. As before, I brought a model of depicting the pilings of the Malibu Pier and how the lengths of the pilings have been falsified to extract the taxpayers' dollars falsely. I have also samples of, which I'll show the public, of would be the wrappings around the pilings. This was produced by Fife Company, which is an unlicensed contractor or unlicensed company, and has no right to recovery under the law under 7031 of the Business and Professions Code. They were paid $96,000 by receiver David J. Pasternak in 2001, and still Accent Builders has not been paid $166,000, which Pasternak is trying to get them paid. None of the contractors or companies had contracts. Many of them were unlicensed contractors like Fife. Their product failed on the pier and are continuing to leak creosote into the ocean, which was banned by the federal permit under the Army Corps of Engineers. There was a company called Wallach and Maggio, which had supplied a bid for less than half that amount with carbon fiber, which is on this sample here.
Can we talk to Van Nuys from here?
Yeah, hold on one second, Mr. Darian. We'll pause right there. Mr. Labange has a question. Yes, Mr.
If my understanding of the County of Los Angeles, the Malibu Pier is in the County of Los Angeles in the city of Malibu, is that correct?
That is correct. Mr. Darian has alleged city officials that are involved in this, and that's been his connection to city business
What,
before.
has he done it in writing to our city attorney? Because I don't want to,
Sure.
have an investigation by our
Again,
city attorney
Mr. Darian,
to advise him?
if you can link this as much as possible to the city of Los Angeles and our direct jurisdiction. Thank you, Mr. Labange. Please continue, and we've paused your time. Continue.
Okay, certainly. The Malibu Pier and the corruption surrounding it involves also the lawsuit that was brought under the Clean Water Act. The public can refer to MalibuPierScandal.com. Involves the drastic pollution to the Los Angeles River via Tapia Reclamation Facility, which also drains to Malibu Canyon and then drains out to the Malibu Pier. The surrounding crimes that involved Tapia Reclamation Facility, Pepperdine University, which pumps to Tapia facility and out to the creek there. The city officials are connected. Mayor Reardon's house is less than a half a mile from the Malibu Pier. It's painted the same color, and he has ties and connections with that. He's tied with the Department of Parks and Recreation on Gladstone's Restaurant, which is just down the beach at Will Rogers Beach in Sunset. And there's been long time sweetheart deals with this project. It's been closed for 11 and a half years.
Thank you, Mr.
And there is
Darian.
certainly
If I
a
can ask you
tie
to
to the
conclude.
Los Angeles business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. We'll now turn to Jorge Castaño, to be followed by the one and only Zuma Dog.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here's an idea that would increase business productivity and help improve the quality of life for employees in LA County. I'm proposing a basic preventative health care insurance policy for all employees in LA. Now, I know that the first thought that comes to mind is it's too expensive. And indeed, regular health benefits are too expensive, but I feel certain it's due to the incredible cost of everything that has to do with going to a hospital for any reason. This plan would have nothing to do with hospitals. Flu vaccines cost around $30, and they're not being purchased in bulk. And checkups, which include blood work, run less than $500 at the Mid-Valley Comprehensive Health Center in Van Nuys. All of these services could be paid for by a cost equivalent to raising wages 28 cents per hour, and a healthier workforce is a more productive workforce. Any business measures its cost-benefit ratio, and so does this. Benefits are a healthier workforce, a workforce which feels they're cared for, and both of these could very well lead to a lift in morale, all of which are pluses to the employer. In addition, these benefits will make employment in LA County more attractive than in other locations, thereby bringing in a better workforce. Realizing that some businesses could be placed out of business because of this, I would suggest that if their previous year's profits were less than 3 times the cost of implementing this program for that company, that they would be exempt. I ask yourselves if these things are true, and I hope that you'd find time to seriously consider this idea. Please excuse the fact that I did not have enough of the handouts which lay out the cost.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your testimony today. Zuma Dog is next. Going once, going twice. No Zuma dog today. Matt Dowd? Matt Dowd here? Going once? Going twice? Michael Hunt?
All right, my name is Michael Hunt. I'm back on the record. Here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about my new website. My new website is called myspace.com. I'm a nigga 2, featuring LA City Council. It's featuring everybody here in this council. Now, the point being that it shows all the injustices. To me, the word nigga means injustice. It doesn't mean racial or anything else. It means injustice. All the injustice acts that are happening here in LA, like the fraudulent permits, 1,300 fraudulent permits that the city of Los Angeles sold. That's an injustice. That, to me, is called the Nigger Act. I can't help it. I tried to be nice. I tried to be cool with it, and I tried to listen to it. But the word is still permissible up under the Brown Act.
Yes, excuse me one second. Mr. Labange, can we please pause the timer?
Are you listening to the gentleman and the words he's using? Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, yes, but the word is still permissible up under the Brown Act. That's what you guys don't understand. Let's ask Mr. City Attorney. It's not derogatory. I'm not using it in a derogatory way. I'm using it in a way of saying it's discrimination against us. That's why I say it's the Nigger Act when you fired the best police chief in Los Angeles City. I think that is derogatory. It's not being used in a prejudicial way. It's being used in a way to set an example. If you stop discriminating, you won't have this. I don't want to be here. I'd rather be at work. Get that straight. I'd rather be at work. I don't want to be down here with you guys. So at any cost, how I have to describe it is still a freedom of expression. That is my right up under the First Amendment. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. To remind colleagues, we will be today in Rules and Elections Committee taking up the issues of a code of propriety here in council. Any council members that are interested in commenting on that, we invite you to the Rules and Elections Committee. And thank you, Mr. Labange. I'm sorry I was talking to the Sergeant at Arms. I didn't hear what was going on, so my apologies to the council members. Next, Mr. Matt Dowd.
Thank you very much. Once again, I just want to speak to the younger people, the children of the city, because the city of Los Angeles will sell you one of these permits at Venice Beach, and then 6 months later they'll change the law, which will make you a criminal, but you still got a permit. You can be down there using one of these permits, doing something permissible under the First Amendment. And the guy who wrote the agreement that we signed, which has First Amendment clauses in it, his name's Rocky Delgado, and we love the LA Times because there it is, Brown easily defeats Delgadillo. Now, if it shows that he's an easy beat. He got beat in his own, in his own constituency. And he's meant to be fighting for jobs. If he's, if he's in a democratic race for, some kind of representation, then jobs surely should be at the top of his list. So that's why he got beat, because he can't keep his word. He wants to change the law, and that's not a good thing to have in an attorney general. Now, there's a lot of jewelers, jewelry makers, craftspeople. If you ever want to make jewelry, any kind of craftsmanship, Venice Beach was a place where you could exercise that right and make and sell your own jewelry. And I'm here fighting for all those guys and anybody who makes a shirt or something with a message, no matter what the message is. If you have a particular message, then you have a right to be out there. And I'm going to continue to stand up for those people because they don't believe they can fight City Hall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd.
I can see why.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else wishing to be heard for public comment, general public comment? If not, we will close general public comment. If we can run through the agenda, Mr. Clerk. First order of business.
On the regular agenda, items 1 through 8 are street lighting district items, notice for public hearing.
Okay. Colleagues, anybody wishing to call 1 through 8 special? If not, let's take those up together. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items.
Item 9 is an item notice for public hearing, and the recommendation for council action is to continue the hearing to July 18th.
Okay, colleagues, on item number 9, is there any objection to continuing that until July 18th? If not, so ordered. Next item.
Item 10 is the Prop K assessments for 2006-2007. It has been noticed for public hearing, and there is a card on that.
Okay, let's call that special for the cards from the public. Next items.
Items 11 through 29 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 11 through 13 are commission appointments. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, let's hold those 3 on the desk, please.
Budget and Finance has submitted its report on item 16. The Trade and Commerce Committee met this morning, and its report has not been submitted yet on item 27.
Okay. Specials, colleagues. Mr. Smith?
19,
19 for Mr. Smith. Mr. Reyes?
21, and 28, please.
21 and 28 for Mr. Smith. Mr. Cardenas?
16.
16 for Mr. Cardenas. And Mr. Parks?
15.
15 for Mr. Parks. Any other specials, colleagues, in the balance? We have 14, 17, 18, 20, 22 through 26, 29, and we do need to await, I believe, a report on 27, so why don't we hold that on the desk? I'll call that special, too. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, let's... Do we have a motion on 29? We have 2 different reports there, so from which committees? Mr. Clerk?
I believe Ms. Perry was going to move the Personnel Committee report.
Ms. Perry? Did you want to move the personnel report on item 29? Yep, okay. We'll move that, and I will second that. So on the balance, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 30 through 56 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration. Items 30 through 32 are commission appointments. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, let's hold the commissioners on the desk.
That would leave items 33 through 56.
We have cards on item 44, so let's call that special for cards from the public. Are there specials, colleagues? Ms. Hahn? Sorry? 55. 55 for Mr. Rosendahl. And Ms. Hahn, it was 44? Okay. All right. Are there specials, colleagues?
Mr. President, what was that last special?
44 was called special for cards and by Ms. Hahn, and Mr. Rosendahl called 55 special. Are there any other specials, colleagues? If not, let us please open the roll on the balance, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Those are approved as well. Next items. please.
Items 57 through 64 are the closed session items. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, let's hold those on the desk for executive session. Mr. Reyes?
Forthwith on 56, please.
Okay, let's send 56 forthwith, please, if there's no objection. Any other forthwith, colleagues? If not, we have a special meeting. What time is that? That's agendized for 10:15?
That was agendized for 10:15.
Okay, why don't we suspend the regular meeting, and if we can call roll for the special meeting.
Cardenas, Gruel, Han, Weezer, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Weston, Zine, Garcetti, 13 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, it's just one item?
And this is a one item that is a closed session matter.
Okay, why don't we hold that on the desk, and if we can continue the special meeting into the regular meeting. And that returns us, colleagues, to our first special items.
Do you wish to take up all the commissioners at this point?
Yes, let's take up the commissioners.
The first commission appointment is Ms. Joyce Perkins to the Environmental Affairs Commission.
Okay, hold on. Just before that, Mr. Parks?
Could I get a reconsideration of 29? I need to add a verbal amendment.
29?
Yes.
Okay. Before we take up the commissioners, let's open the roll on reconsideration of 29, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Do you need a little time on that, Mr. Parks, or you want to make that amendment now?
Ms. Perry requested that the Personnel Committee report be adopted.
Yes.
I just like to add a verbal amendment that the Fire Department and the CAO work together to ensure that the fee that is going to be offered is sufficient to cover the 5 positions.
Okay. Is there any objection to that? If not, that'll be accepted as a friendly amendment, and let us reopen the roll on 29 as amended. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Okay, that is approved. So, Ms. Perkins, if you'd like to come forward, is Ms. Perkins here? Yeah, there she is. Come on forward to the table. Why don't you come all the way to the table here? And we will ask you some questions. Mr. Parks, would you like to say anything about Ms. Perkins? I know she's a resident of Council District 8.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Joyce, I can't even count all the things we've appointed her to and the things that she does just in general, but she's basically is a part of our CACs. She's also deals with our streetscapes. She's part of a board with MTA and dealing with our bus transportation, and just recently taken on a task of being a part of the design review committee on the Expo line. And so not only does she live in the 8th District and committed as an activist, but she spends her whole life dealing with improvements and the kinds of things that are necessary for day-to-day quality of life issues in the 8th District. And so I would just like to say to all of us that if we had a couple of thousands of Joyce Perkinses, all of our jobs would be easier on a day-to-day basis, and I would just strongly recommend that we all give her a unanimous vote on this commission assignment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Are there any other, Ms. Perry?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Again, I wanted to reiterate my support for Ms. Perkins. She has extensive community advocacy experience in her portfolio of skills, and I'm sure she's going to make a fine addition to this commission.
Mr. Reyes.
I just really want to say thank you for all your hard work in the city. I've been working with Ms. Perkins since the mid-'90s, early '90s, from the TNIs, the Lonnies, and everything in between, in a whole range of environments, different communities, and you'll be a wonderful, wonderful addition to the city family. And again, thank you for all your hard work in the past, and I'm sure for all your future endeavors. So thank you so much.
Thank
Ms.
you very
Gruhl.
much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add my congratulations and thank you, because Joyce has had a long history, as mentioned by my colleagues, of activism and knowledge, and is going to be an excellent commissioner, and I think represent a lot of the important issues that we think need to be addressed in the Environmental Affairs Department, and the importance of, we talked about in committee, of transparency and more involvement as we go through some of the processes where environmental affairs has an imprint, in ensuring the community is involved as much as possible. And I know, again, with her experience, that is going to be a critical component. But Joyce has been a familiar face around our City Council and City Hall, and just want to thank you for your commitment and willingness to serve. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Joyce.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Mr. President, good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations on stepping forward to do public service, and I know my colleagues and I are all going to be enthusiastic supporters. But when you take a deep breath and you see this commission you're going on, what do you hope to accomplish on that commission?
As with the Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative, which I co-founded with the mayor's office as a partner to city departments, our primary focus has been to build the capacity of the community members and stakeholders, and to give them opportunities to learn and participate in processes. And while I do have experience in other physical aspects of environmental infrastructure and improvements, I think this is one of the components that I can bring, the experience that I've had over the past few years in developing and tweaking this community engagement model that helps to bring everybody at the table.
And when you say that environmental justice is a big issue, explain what you mean by environmental justice and how things have been and need to change.
Environmental justice to me is people being involved and being aware of a process and being at the table and having information so they can make informed decisions. And I think in the past that has been done to an extent, but not to the extent that many of our constituents feel that they've had the kind of buy-in they would like. So it's taking a look at what is already there and trying to improve it, not trying to redo it, because I think that there have been efforts made to include communities in decisions that have affected their community. But I think that there's always an opportunity to listen and learn from lessons, benefit from lessons learned, and do it better. And that's what I want to take a look at on the Environmental Affairs Commission, see how we can just make that situation involvement better, or as Councilwoman Gruhl said, make it more transparent.
And health is a big issue with the environmental justice. The port and some of the exhaust there. Even in my district, I have Santa Monica Airport, where these planes are just flowing their toxic fuels into my neighborhoods. So the more community is involved in its own destination and destiny, the better off we are.
Absolutely, and knowing what choices they have to try to mitigate that and address those problems.
Great, thank you so much.
And you're very welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I don't rise to ask any questions whatsoever. I've known this young lady for quite a while. If I were to ask a question, it would be, how do you find the time? I mean, you are a phenomenal community person, and that you would dice up your schedule in such a way to serve on this commission is commendable. So I support you 100%.
Thank
and
you.
just wanted to stand up and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to be heard? We thank you for your great work and for putting yourself forward. Let's open the roll on the nomination and close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Please give her a round of applause. Our next commission appointment?
Item 12 is the appointment of Dean Hansel to the Board of Information Technology Commissioners.
Never heard of him, but why don't you step forward anyway? Welcome, Mr. Hansel. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Mr. Cardenas is Chair of ITGS.
Thank you very much. Once again, as I mentioned in committee, we've had the opportunity to catch up on the issues that face your commission, and I'm just pleased and appreciate it, and I want to say thank you on behalf of the people of Los Angeles that we have somebody who's so dedicated and willing to get involved in issues that most people really find either too technical or kind of mundane, or things that they are involved in their life but just really don't want to get involved in the details. But you do, and you have, and this commission is very important, as we all are all well aware here in this horseshoe, both Washington and our state capital in Sacramento, they are looking to change our world when it comes to communication and what kind of a relationship we're going to be having into the future when it comes to who has access to the future technologies of information, who is going to be responsible for giving corporations that opportunity and that access. And you've actually held hearings on our cable franchising, and also on having to understand what the relationship into the future is going to be when it comes to video feed to people's homes and businesses, et cetera. So rather than get involved in even more boring details, I just want to once again thank you for your dedication and your willingness to do such an important job that most people find either uninteresting or too boring. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gruhl is next, and then Mr. Rosendahl.
Dina, quick question. How long have you been on the commission?
5 years.
5 years, which is a long time. And I think between were you originally appointed by Reardon or Hahn?
No, I was appointed by Hahn to
Okay, because I was wondering if you came over 3 different mayors,
Yes,
you
I
know.
have.
But I think Dean has brought, I think as Mr. Cardenas said, you know, a willingness to look into the details. And for us, the cable industry and the issues that are facing us in technology will have an enormous impact on not only the customers, but also on the city and our ability to operate and our ability to manage and to ensure that we have the appropriate oversight and to ensure that also the city resources that we've been getting through the cable industry for many years does not dry up. I mean, the amounts and millions of dollars that are at risk and at stake here is incredible. And so I feel very comforted to know that you are one of the commissioners looking out for us and sitting there and making sure the devil's in the details and making sure the details are being followed. So we look forward to you sharing with us some of the things that you learn through the commission and through your experiences to really protect the citizens of Los Angeles and to ensure they get the appropriate cable service. So I just want to say thank you again for your commitment of serving for the last 5 years and your willingness to stay on and do that. Colleagues, he just finished the AIDS ride. How many miles?
585 miles.
585 miles of riding his bike. Let's give Dean a great big round of applause for completing that, because that's something not many people can do, although there were several, and it said they raised close to $8 million. So thank you for your commitment in the community as well, and congratulations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Rosendahl is next, to be followed by Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Good morning. We're happy that you're going back into this and staying with it and providing some leadership, but I have some real concerns. My first concern is what's going on in Sacramento and what's going on in Washington. I'd like your opinion of that.
I think it's it's looking more and more like it may be inevitability that something gets passed in Sacramento, and there are a couple real concerns that we as Angelenos should have. Number one deals with customer service, which is a major issue, which all of you hear about from your constituents. One of the problems, it's going to be much more difficult for people to complain to people in Sacramento as opposed to people here. To the responsiveness, what happens when you do complain? How are they going to respond to it? I think their track record is less than admirable in Sacramento.
So customer service will be a big problem.
Customer service is one. A second issue deals with revenue. The way the current bill is structured is that the money would flow first to Sacramento, then ultimately would flow back to the municipalities. That raises two issues. One is just the timing of it. Two is the accuracy of the money that comes in there. As you well know, we've got a fairly finely honed franchise audit process, and it's literally after the money is received that the franchise audit process begins, and it's a reasonably efficient process that we do, and every year results in sums almost as much as $1 million a year that we receive as a result of the audit process. Will the state be committed to that? It's not clear to me that they will. The second thing is when they deal with it, how quickly are they going to deal with it, and who's going to handle the negotiations when the operators object to it? I think there's some very significant financial issues. The third, as Councilmember Gruhl and Cardenas alluded to, is technology with it, especially in Los Angeles. We're the technological capital of the world, and we have a vital interest in making sure that everything we have is state-of-the-art. It's so important to our economy that happens. We've got some leverage currently. We may lose that leverage if everything goes to Sacramento. So I have significant concerns about the legislation that's going on in Sacramento. And as far as Washington goes, it's even more so, because obviously it's far more remote than even Sacramento.
Do you think the community benefit packages are in jeopardy too? Public education, government access, local origination, and other forms of wiring schools, wiring libraries, all of these things that bring in the community benefit package?
There'll be some dangers with it. Under the Federal Communications Act, they have certain requirements that they're going to have to honor, such as with PEG access, but there are other things that are not required by statute that we've been able over the years to be able to obtain from the operators, and I have a concern about that as well. They have to, for example, now they have to have one connection into a schoolhouse. Well, that's a lot different than wiring every classroom, for example. And the various things that over the years, just in the give and take, we've been able to negotiate in Los Angeles, I don't know that that's going to be able to continue in Sacramento as well. So that's another concern that I have with that legislation.
What about the renewal of the Time Warner franchise, which will be the conglomerate for our city? Will that be in jeopardy too?
Well, certainly I think what would happen with that process is that if this bill passes, the state would take that negotiation process over. And as you may know, they've been the process right now, Time Warner has been sort of slowing the process down, anticipating that that the city ultimately will be out of the renewal process, and it will be in Sacramento instead. And I think there's some real issues with it, all of the ones that we've talked about right now, and just our ability to be able to have leverage when their problems come up and when the ITA staff can get the attention of various cable representatives right now. Will that continue if the real source of that power is 750 miles away?
So saying that, you're basically saying the phone company wants to come into the cable business, they got the wires to the house. Will we get a reflective franchise fee out of Sacramento for the phone companies providing service like we do with cable?
Yes, to the same degree with the same definitions as with the cable operators. And certainly, competition in itself is a desirable thing. I think from that point of view, it's good that the phone companies come in as well, but it's really the same issues. It's franchise issues, it's technological issues, it's customer service issues, and again, if we're able to handle it here, then there's a lot more accountability for it. We've got more of a track record for it. If it's done in Sacramento, I'm a little more nervous about what might happen.
Thank you very much for that enlightenment for all of us here. Colleagues, this is a serious issue, and when it does go to Sacramento, if it does go to Sacramento, we will lose all of our muscle, all of our relationship with both customer service issues and all the other things you pointed out. Thanks again for coming up and serving on that commission.
Great, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Ms. Perry is our next speaker, and after Ms. Perry, we have Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to speak affirmatively on behalf of Mr. Hansel. He's one of the brightest and one of the best appointees that we've had, and I'm just grateful he's willing to put in more time. So thank you for your public service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to thank Mr. Hansel for all his work. I know he's worked with the city family for some time. When it comes to the city of Los Angeles and its diversity, and looking at the need to communicate more with our neighborhoods, our communities, our department has been recognized and awarded for its technological efforts and its advancements. But from your point of view, with your history in working with the city in of itself, do you have any observations or recommendations how we can expand that notion of inclusivity, given the diverse language and cultural base that we have, and using technology, maybe the universities, the schools, the libraries? I mean, can you give me some feedback on what your impressions on that?
Yes, and in fact, you've reminded me about another point as well, maybe even an addition to Council Member Rosendahl's questions. We have, as you know, one of the things that BITSI has done is adopted a comprehensive set of customer service standards, which includes a Bill of Rights, which are available both in English and in Spanish. We've adopted language requirements as part of it as well, in terms of not just Spanish with having customer service representatives, but also if there's a particular area in the city where there's another dominant language as well, of having the operators have language capabilities in those areas. And it's a concern I have, will that commitment to diversity again be lost if it goes to Sacramento? Another issue with diversity as well, which gets into an issue of fundamental justice, relates to the digital divide. And there are millions of Angelenos that don't have access right now to the internet, and it's a critical issue to the mayor and to others in the city that we do things to try to bridge the digital divide. And certainly, again, our ability to hold operators' feet to the fire and provide additional resources, I think, will be compromised a bit with some of the power taken out of the city. I mean, having said that, there still are things that we can do, with the library being the best example, with the different homework centers in each of the 71 branches of the library. And if you walk into any one of them any time of day or night, to see they're full of people using computers and so forth, and it's for the most part economically disadvantaged people. And I think that commitment is something that we need to continue even beyond the libraries and into using other city resources as well to help to bridge that divide as well.
Well, thank you, Ms. Hansel, for all your work. And again, you've got a great department. They've been at the cutting edge. It's a matter of how we continue to leverage the strengths of the city, and I believe its diversity and cultural richness is one of those assets. So thank you so much. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Our next speaker is Mr. Labange.
I greatly appreciate the constituents of the 4th District. Appreciate your service to the City of Los Angeles, Mayor Villaraigosa. Commissioner, do you ever go to restaurants?
Do you ever go to restaurants?
Right.
I go all the time to restaurants.
What do you look at sometimes when you walk in the door? Besides the menu. Thank you, Ms. Hahn. The A, B, and C. Do you ever look at that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I want you to start judging us A, B, and C at our departments. So we meet milestones. I want to know if we're getting an A or a B or a C. I want you to think about that.
Okay.
Just to put pressure on us, because you know what really is flabbergasting is sometimes we find out that technology is there, but we're not using it. And why aren't we using it? So I think if your commission have that discussion in an open forum and come up with some kind of plan, I don't know if it's A, B, and C, but you know my drift, and I would greatly appreciate that.
And I think actually one benefit of that too is because of tighter budgets. One thing with being technologically advanced is that it's a lot less expensive.
Right.
When you can do that, I mean, the extent that technology becomes a way of life. I mean, look at how long it takes to make an arrest, for example.
Right.
With all the paperwork, and if we could shorten that, as as Councilmember Parks knows,
Right.
that how much more time officers would be able to spend out on the field. So
Well, you mentioned that issue too. You know, right across the street here, the courthouse. You know what happens in the courthouse? Everybody who's in the jury boxes, you know what they think of? CSI. And they say, why can't we have that here? Because they have this amazing fascination that all this CSI stuff could help, bring justice. But we're not CSI yet. But one day we could be.
Let's hope so.
And one way we should also find out who really is. Is Miami CSI really Miami CSI? And could Los Angeles be CSI to do, I'd close the line from a very famous guy who used to flow out of this building. You know who used to fly out of this building?
No. Who?
Superman.
Of course, that's right.
And truth, justice, and the American way. I mean, that's real important. Anyway, I went way around in old school technology there to give you the point. You understand it. I'm proud of you. Thank you for your service. And Mr. President, a strong recommendation for this great constituent of the 4th District. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Labange, you've convinced us. If we can open the roll on this nomination, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you, Dean, for your friendship to this council and for your great service to the city.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Next, Commissioner, please.
Item 13 is the appointment of Ms. Fabiola Vilches to the East Los Angeles Area Planning Commission.
Ms. Vilches, if you would come forward. If Mr. Reyes would like to speak first as Chair of Plum.
Thank you, Council President. Again, colleagues, I just rise to ask for an aye vote. Carla Fabiola, she's been a tremendous asset to the city, has worked in different jurisdictions under different elected officials. She has a master's in planning, has an eye for how communities work, and I think she'll be a great asset to this city family. And I'm not going to throw any questions at you, Fabiola, but I just want to say thank you for your hard work, and I hope we all can agree and have an aye vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, and I joined that chorus. Ms. Vilches used to work in Council District 13, and we've worked very closely as in her newest incarnations as she's been helping Assemblymember Jackie Goldberg, and just want to thank you for everything you've done. I'm very excited that you've been nominated, and if there's anything you'd like to say to the council, now would be the time.
Well, I'm very excited about this appointment. I'm looking forward to be back at the city. I've been with the state now for about 2 years, and I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and working with everyone in the planning department, colleagues on the commission, the mayor's office, and I'm just really excited and thankful for this amazing opportunity.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Fabiola. If we can open the roll on the nomination, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Next Commissioner, please.
Item 30 is the reappointment of Mrs. Bobby Parks to the Commission for Children, Youth, and Their Families.
Colleagues, Ms. Parks is a little bit under the weather today. I hope she is watching us at home because I know she has 15 fans, one special fan, who I believe is going to have to recuse himself on this one. So we know how you would vote, Mr. Parks, but why don't you? Yeah, why does he not say it out loud? Mr. Labange moves the nomination, and Mr. Rosendahl seconds it.
And send greetings to Mrs. Parks to get well if she's watching.
Absolutely. We hope Bobby has a quick recovery, and we thank her for her already great service in a short period of time. With that, if we can open the roll on the renomination, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That reappointment is approved. Congratulations. And if we go to the next commission appointment.
Item 31 is the reappointment of Ms. Donna Brown-Guillaume to the Commission for Children, Youth, and Their Families.
Why don't you step forward as well, Ms. Brown-Guillaume? Mr. Labange, would you like to?
Commissioner, thank you for your service. Appreciate you. And you were just here recently. How's the first part of your service? You excited about it?
Oh, it's been great, yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Strong recommendation, Mr. President. Move forward. Thank you.
Ms. Gruhl? Sorry, would you like to say something, Ms. Guillaume-Brown?
No, I was just
Okay. Ms. Gruhl, next.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Donna, for being here. It was only a few months ago that you were appointed. We've had a few reappointments that filled vacancies, but we're so pleased that you're on the commission. I know I have heard how active you've been, not only on this commission, but on working on domestic violence. Colleagues, Donna is a constituent of mine and my district, and as I say frequently, we met for coffee, and we could have spent hours talking about issues, particularly around children. So I just want to thank you for your willingness to stay on the commission, come back down here and go through this process to stay on the commission, and look forward to coming and talking to the members of the commission about some of the things we can do jointly to better serve our children, youth, and families.
You're
so
welcome,
thank you.
Wendy. Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the council, Ms. Brown-Guillaume?
No, I mean, I've only been serving since March, and I've become a member of the Health and Nutrition Committee, Subcommittee, and also a member of the Domestic Violence Task Force. So still getting my feet wet, but I see there's a lot of good work going on, and there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Great. Well, thank the mayor for your renomination, and with that, we'll open the roll on your confirmation, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next nominee, please.
Item 32 is the reappointment of Mr. Evangelos Sambatilos to the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners.
All right. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Nice seeing you all.
Building and Safety, Mr. Labange.
I just wanted to speak to this great citizen of Los Angeles, although serving a short time, coming back for reappointment. Van certainly understands the business community because he's worked in it for so many years. He's an excellent appointee of Mayor Villaraigosa, a wonderful family, longtime friends of the late, great John Ferraro. So I strongly recommend Van to this appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes.
President, I just want to thank Mr. Ambatiellos for his participation. I know this is his second round. This is a learning curve. I just want to ask you quickly, of your two meetings, what observations did you walk away with, and what kind of contribution you see yourself adding, knowing that you're going through this learning curve? Hate to put you on the spot, but
No,
I
you're
would
not
just like
putting-
to get your point of view.
You're not putting me on the spot. There's a learning curve, and after two meetings, it's difficult to make any precise observations. What I bring to the commission is the hope of having a building and safety commission that's user-friendly, okay, and that strives to protect the rights, property rights of the citizenry of Los Angeles. And that's a fine balance, and it's something I strive for as a goal. It's a wonderful commission. Andrew Adelman is a wonderful head of building and safety, and it's a wonderful experience. That's all I can say.
Thank you, sir, for your hard work. And again, look forward to working with you as your work comes to planning, land use, and management on the building and safety. Look forward to hopefully some changes in how we make the city much more efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Mr. Ambatilos' renomination? If not, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service. All right, if we can reconsider item 23, please. We can open the roll on reconsideration of 23. And close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
And if we can continue that 1 week till June 21st, if there's no objection, that will be the order. We had a request to take 21 out of order. I know we have some guests that are here, Mr. Reyes, called number 21 special. It would require a reopening of the public hearing on item number 21, Mr. Reyes. So if you'd like to move to reopen on item 21, Mr. Reyes, the public hearing, we could take the public comments on that.
Yes, let's take public comment.
Okay. We just have 4 public speaker cards, so let's make that 10 minutes. We'll have 2 minutes per speaker. And we'd like to ask Norma Barrias to come forward, and then Rosa Ojeda, Lilia Garcia, and Mike Garcia. Welcome.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Norma Varillas, trabajo como janitor, no unión, en Hollywood Center Studios. ¿A dónde? Acá.
Hi, my name is Norma Barrias. I work as a non-union janitor at Hollywood Center Studios in Los Angeles.
Gano $7.50 la hora y no tengo seguro médico.
I make only $7.50 an hour and I don't have health care.
Trabajo en un lugar que significa riqueza y todo lo que es lujo de Los Ángeles, pero mi situación es otra.
I work at a studio that symbolizes everything that is glamorous and wealthy about Los Angeles, but that is not my reality.
Con un sueldo muy poco yo y mi familia tenemos que hacer muchos sacrificios.
With such low wages, my family and I have to make many sacrifices.
Yo y mi esposo y mis 5 hijos vivimos en un apartamento de una recámara y mi cheque solo alcanza para pagar la renta, que son $1,000.
My husband, my 5 children, and I live in a crowded apartment of 1 bedroom. And my check, my low wages, can barely make the rent, which is $1,000.
Yo no he podido ir al doctor por años, por lo que me duele más que mi sueldo no me alcanza para llevar a mis hijos al doctor. Solamente los llevo a la clínica del gobierno para su chequeo físico una vez al año.
I haven't been able to go to the doctor for years, but what hurts me more is that I can't afford to take my children to the doctor. I'm only able to take them to a government clinic once a year for their annual physical.
Es muy difícil porque tengo una hija que tiene 16 años y necesita una operación de sus ojos. Y pues en la escuela a ella le hacen burla. Y no puedo llevarla al doctor, no puedo pagar eso.
It's very difficult. One of my daughters is 16 years old, and she needs surgery in one of her eyes. But I can't take her to the doctor because I can't afford that operation since I don't have health care. And being 16, it's very hard because she gets made fun of for her eye that needs an operation from her classmates.
El problema no es solo el sueldo bajo. No nos están dando nuestro break ni nuestro lunch. También trabajamos overtime y no nos pagan como overtime.
The problem just isn't low wages. We're often denied our breaks and our lunchtime and asked to work overtime without being paid for that overtime.
No nos han dado entrenamiento cómo usar los líquidos ni los químicos. Apenas esta semana nos dieron un libro que no hemos leído.
We also haven't received training on how to use all the liquids and chemicals that we need to use to clean these studios facilities. Only this week they gave us a handbook that they didn't bother to review with us.
Yo trabajo tiempo completo. Cada persona en nuestra ciudad necesita seguro médico. Yo estoy luchando para una unión. Necesito una vida mejor para mi familia. No nos vamos a parar hasta que ganemos.
I work hard and I work full-time, and I believe that everyone in this city needs health care. I'm fighting for a union. I need a better life for my family, and we're not going to stop until we win.
De parte de todos los janitors pedimos su apoyo para una vida mejor y para que nuestra familia esté mejor. Muchas gracias.
On the part of all the janitors, we thank you for your time, and we ask for your support so our families could have a better life.
Thank you. We'll put the clock again at 2 minutes. If we can try to keep the comments. We'll go a little longer with the translation, but if we can try to keep it to that. Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Rosa Ojeda. Trabajo como janitor en Unión en los estudios de Disney en Burba. Con la Unión hemos luchado y hemos ganado sueldos dignos y seguro médico para nuestras familias. Con la Unión mi familia no tiene que hacer los mismos sacrificios como mis compañeros de no Unión.
Hi, my name is Rosa Ojeda, and I work as a union janitor at Disney Studios in Burbank. With the union, we fought and we've won decent wages and health care for our families. With the union, my family does not have to make the same kinds of sacrifices that my friends and colleagues do who are non-union.
Hace una gran diferencia trabajar para una compañía de unión que cumple con las leyes y que no está violando mis derechos como trabajadora.
It makes a huge difference to work for a union company that obeys the law and isn't violating my rights as a worker.
Y por eso estoy aquí hoy en día. Aunque el estudio de Disney donde yo trabajo es de unión, desafortunadamente Disney y ABC tienen una propiedad en Los Ángeles que no es de unión. Compañías deben de ser consistentes en sus estándares, porque es que Disney y ABC permite que janitors sean maltratados en sus edificios. No es justo, no es aceptable.
And that's why I'm here today. Although Disney Studios, where I work, is union, unfortunately, Disney ABC has a property in Los Angeles that is non-union. Companies need to be consistent in their standards. Why is it that Disney and ABC permit the janitors are mistreated in their buildings? It's not fair and it's not acceptable.
Estoy aquí para decirles que todos los janitors de unión estamos apoyando a nuestros compañeros de no unión en los estudios del condado de Los Ángeles. Estos estudios ricos se benefician de nuestro trabajo duro. Aunque los estudios no quieran tratar como si fuéramos invisibles, los janitors estamos unidos y no vamos a quedar detrás de las cortinas. Vamos a luchar hasta que ganamos.
These very wealthy studios benefit from our hard work, and although they want to treat us like we're invisible, the janitors are united and we won't continue to stay behind the curtain. We're going to fight until we win. Thank you.
Okay. Gracias. Thank you. Next speaker.
Buenos dias, good morning. My name is Lilia Garcia. I work with the Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund. We're a janitorial watchdog group. Today we're addressing two issues. We're addressing an issue of justice and we're addressing issues of the law. You just heard Norma testify about her contractor not being compliant. We are talking about minimal standards. We are talking about paying minimum wage, paying overtime, carrying workers' comp, and complying with health and safety regulations. Los Angeles cannot afford these type of unscrupulous contractors. In Los Angeles alone, we have over 800,000 workers who operate in the predatory economy, cash pay, no workers' comp. We can't afford this for two reasons. One, the practicality of it. We need the revenue. We need people to be paid. We need jobs that are upwardly mobile. And the second reason is it's simply wrong. So we'd like to thank Councilman Reyes for his leadership today and the other members. We need your support. Unfortunately, employers and clients like the entertainment industry and these studios do not understand that. And these issues have been brought to their attention and they continue to contract with these law-breaking companies. So we need some clarity. We need to raise the bar to minimal standards to start from there. And in order for Los Angeles to grow, we need jobs that are upwardly mobile. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia.
Hello, I'm Mike Garcia, president of SEIU Local 1877. The entertainment industry has a public image of glamour and prosperity, but it's not all that glamorous everywhere you look. This is the image of Hollywood: limos, lavish parties, billions of dollars executive salaries. You know the life. But what really happens behind the scenes for the working poor in these industries is what we come to address you here today. While the industry has maintained good jobs for many of working families in California, it has maintained poverty jobs for many of the service workers who behind the scenes help this industry thrive. Non-union poverty jobs at major studios like NBC, ABC, and CBS also hurt the general public. You've heard directly from janitors about how low wages and no health care benefits hurt their families. But think about what happens when Norma, who just addressed you, at Hollywood Center, janitor at Hollywood Center Studios, has to take her children to government-subsidized clinics. Industry giants receive assistance from the city. We know that. But it is LA's taxpayers who must subsidize the poverty wage jobs at the studios when janitors are forced to use the already overburdened public health care system. It is outrageous that these conditions exist in one of the city's most lucrative and privileged industries. The entertainment industry needs to clean up its image. These giants' refusal to take a leadership role lies in stark contrast to how other major corporations across Los Angeles, across the state, and across this country deal with their subcontracted janitorial workforce. Because of the hard work of these janitors and the support of strong elected officials such as yourselves, the vast majority of the corporations in LA use responsible cleaning contractors. They understand that investment in quality services means less turnover and greater tenant satisfaction. In contrast to the entertainment industry giants, they recognize that they can outsource their cleaning work, but not their corporate responsibility. The entertainment industry is in many ways synonymous with LA, and in the industry, image is everything. If the industry has a bad image, then so does Los Angeles. We ask and call upon your support to support this resolution and support the janitors of the studio industries as you have supported janitors of the commercial real estate industry, aerospace industries, and other industries across Los Angeles to pay responsible wages and benefits to its janitors. Thank you very much on behalf of 25,000 members of Local 1877. We applaud Councilor Reyes, Garcetti, and Gruel for their leadership on this issue. And we thank all you council members here present here today for your ongoing support and everything you've done for us over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. That closes our public comment. We'll go to Mr. Reyes, the maker of the motion first, and then we'll go to Ms. Gruel, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, the HCD committee put forth a report where I ask for your support. The report is very clear. All we're asking as a council is that we have the industry giants in the entertainment, ABC, CBS, NBC Universal, Hollywood Center Studios, Warner Music Group, and Fox to engage in earnest contract negotiations to resolve their differences. The realities of our workers are very real. Today, you have to make at least $47,560 to afford a rent of $1,189 a month, which is the average rent in Los Angeles today. The workers are asking for decent living conditions. They make our city sparkle. They gave it that shine. Why not offer them the same respect, the same type of security that we generate for the industry by polishing their image, literally and physically? We as a council have an opportunity today to make a strong statement. Indeed, I ask my colleagues to pick up the phone and call some of these leaders. I know we run into them in our events. We see them at our social circles. We support them in our policies. We have tried to streamline the permit process. We put forth resolutions that speaks to how other countries are taking away business from this multi-billion-dollar industry. And all we're asking is for them to support our constituents, our residents, the folks in Los Angeles, to make enough money just to live in Los Angeles. It's very fundamental, it's very basic. I don't believe we're asking for too much. I myself, my father being a janitor, with 7 siblings, I know what it is to have a long day at work, pushing the mop, pulling the buckets, dealing with chemicals, dealing with conditions that are sometimes hazardous, and having contractors turn away and say, as long as you get the job done, I don't care how it gets done, get it done. And if you don't like it, I got someone else ready to take your place. This is the pressure, this is the stress that these families are dealing with. And it's ironic to me that we as voters, you as leaders, have supported bonds, have supported improvements in our own city with new libraries, new parks, whole new operations that pick up our quality of life, and in return, they get priced out of their own neighborhoods because we can't keep up their salaries. So I ask for an aye vote. I want to thank my colleagues, Councilor McGruel and Garcetti, for seconding and pushing forth a resolution, and I hope the leadership of the entertainment industry is listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Our next speakers, we've got 4 council members on the queue, starting with Ms. Gruhl, and then Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Huizar, Ms. Han.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti, and thank you, Mr. Reyes, for your impassioned speech there, which I know comes from the heart, and to thank you for those janitors that are here today who took the time to be here and to share your stories with us. I have a little story to share with you. I came from the entertainment industry. I worked with Mike Garcia during the time when there was the janitor strike. And I remember when we talked to Mike and he shared with us the problems we had with many of the contractors. And I just asked him again to understand most of the entertainment industry individuals or companies in Los Angeles contract this out. And they have to send a strong message to those contractors. And we did at that time. We talked to Mike. We talked to the leadership of DreamWorks, and we said to our contractors, we want you to negotiate in good faith with the janitors. We want you to provide them with the health benefits and the wages that allows them to live in Los Angeles. And let it be known to this janitorial company, if you do not treat our workers fairly, we will not contract with you again. And we set that message to them. And we worked closely to try and settle that at that time. And what we're doing today, again, is sending that message. And as Ed mentioned, we've stood here many times. I've been one of them that says we support the entertainment industry. We want to help people who are in front of the camera, behind the camera, the ancillary jobs that are created by having production here in Los Angeles. The faces of the people you see today are the men and women who work every single day as part of that industry. They need to share in the wealth. And so we will support the industry when we can, but we're also going to call on them to be responsible. And so we're asking them to send a clear message to the contractors that they have that provide the janitorial services to these buildings all across the city of Los Angeles, that they need to treat their workers fairly and to sit down at the table. I am working and calling some of the executives that I know at the various studios and asking them to provide the kind of leadership that I think is necessary to help these individuals who serve the community. And so thank you, Mr. Reyes, for your leadership. Thank you for allowing me to sign on because I think it's critically important. And thank you to the workers. Know that you have a supportive city council and that we are going to fight for each one and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker.
I think it's very important that the people of Los Angeles see this discussion as they watch television, as they change the channels and watch their movies and their soap operas, and they go to the movies and see such wonderful work that Los Angeles produces, but what they don't see is all of the workers involved. And we're talking about an industry that is very proud of itself and an industry that we're very proud of because it is a high-paying industry. There are a lot of good-paying jobs. You can get out of high school and get a job making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 a year, and the sky's the limit. But the thing that we need to make everybody understand is that everybody in this industry deserves to have a wage of dignity. Everybody in this industry deserves to do their part. Whether they're sweeping the floor or behind the camera or in the front of the camera, they deserve to have a life of dignity, and this industry can provide that. I believe, in my mind, that many of these industry executives are not as aware of this issue as they are now. And I think as they become aware of this issue, they are going to want to do the right thing, because it is an embarrassment on any industry to treat their employees the way these employees have reported to us that they've been treated. I want to thank the employees for coming to my office and asking me for my help. I will help you with my vote today, and I will help you in any way that I can. Gracias a ustedes por venir a mi oficina y pedir mi ayuda, porque es mi obligación y lo voy a hacer. Les voy a ayudar con mi voto este día y también en cualquier cosa que les puedo ayudar. And if I wish I could speak other languages of the employees, but I only speak two. But that's just my way of saying I do identify with what you're going through. My father came to this country with a first-grade education, was very, very proud and happy and glad to work very hard, 60 hours a week, just to make ends meet. That's just the way it was. He never complained about it, but if I were here today, and he were working those jobs today, I would be fighting for him like I'm fighting for you. It's about dignity. It doesn't matter where you come from. You are now in a country where you are supposed to be treated as a human being, where you're supposed to be treated where you can actually provide for your family and then your children. Maybe they can live your dreams, because maybe you're not thinking of yourself. You're saying, well, I'll sacrifice for them. But the next generation deserves better. You deserve to have enough money to provide your children with proper housing. You deserve to make enough money to provide your children with the food and clothing. That's all you're asking for. I haven't heard anybody come to my office or come to this podium and say that you want a mansion or that you want a luxury car. No, you just want the basic dignity that should be afforded to you. And that's what this resolution is about. It's about that, and I want to thank Mr. Reyes, Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Garcetti for signing this and bringing it forward to us so that we can have an opportunity to vote on this as a council and to send the proper message. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Our next speaker is Mr. Huizar, to be followed by Ms. Hahn and then Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just wanted to mention how we often talk in this horseshoe about how important, or in the city, we talk about how important the entertainment industry is to the economy of the city of Los Angeles. Well, let me tell you, our janitors are just as important to this city. They are the ones that are there making sure that not only the entertainment industry, but our economy continues to go forward, and they're the backbone of the economy in the city of Los Angeles. Not only the janitors, but those people who are often not recognized and the hard labor they put in to make sure the city continues to function. And we all know how outrageous healthcare costs are. Imagine if we all didn't have our health insurance that we have. Imagine that when we take our son or daughter to the doctor, if we didn't have to only pay that $10 co-payment, but we really had to pay the full cost. Imagine if we had to pay the full cost every time we got sick. It's incredible. In this day and age, in the city of Los Angeles, we have to support to make sure that all our workers have those health benefits so that we do not continue to affect their ability to continue to make this city the strong city that it is. We also have to make sure that we focus on providing responsible wages to these workers who are working hard each and every day. We all know how important it is to make sure that the American dream stays alive for all our residents. Many of us in this horseshoe have lived through that. Many of us also recognize how important it is that when we get support from our families, our children will also succeed. Council members, this is a very easy one to support. Our janitors are just as important as the entertainment industry itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I may not speak two languages, but most of the time I speak the language of the workers. And what workers want in this city is fair, decent wages, health benefits, respect, dignity, whether you work for a hotel, whether you work for the downtown skyscraper buildings, or whether you work for the entertainment industry. These are the workers that really keep these industries, as you said, clean and polished. And every weekend, on a Monday morning, we all read about which movie made the most money and who was going to see these movies. And there are millions, billions of dollars that are flowing to the entertainment industry. And you know, we on this city council have been good to the entertainment industry. We have made sure that we do everything in our power to keep them here, to make their working conditions easy. We let them film in City Hall at no cost. We just finished in this budget waiving permit fees for the entertainment industry when they film in city facilities. So we have really worked with them. Now we want to send a message loud and clear that this city demands of all of our businesses, of all of our industries, that they pay their workers decent wages where they can support their family and they can take care of the health issues of their family. You're right, Councilman Reyes. We're not asking very much. We're asking that they enter into fair, honest, transparent negotiations, and ultimately we want to send the message that when push comes to shove, I guess I shouldn't use that analogy anymore, that we are on the side of the workers. Thank you. This is an easy one to support.
Mr. Rosendahl.
It's always great to go after Ms. Hahn because it just inspires me to go forward with these things. First of all, you know, we have been fighting for the entertainment industry against this runaway production business, and we really care about the entertainment industry. But you know, the janitors are the backbone of it. My father, when he came to America as an immigrant, was a janitor. When my mother came, she was a maid. And that's what their first jobs were in this great country. And it is a great job. It's an honest job. It's the backbone of making everything work. And we say to the entertainment industry, and I specifically want to call out ABC, CBS, NBC Universal, Hollywood Center Studios, Warner Music Group, and Fox, to engage in earnest contract negotiations to resolve their differences over janitors' efforts to improve their lives. Now, we're saying to this whole group of entertainment industry people, come to the table and sit with the folks that are the backbone of your industry. You want our continued support, entertainment industry? You want us to be there against runaway production? We'll be there for the workers that make you profitable. Support this motion, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this. Appreciate the passion that was expressed there. Mr. President, if I could just ask the CLA, what's the procedure from here? We vote for this. We approve this. What are we going to actually do with this?
The opportunity to provide more of a limelight and what is happening to the workers, the janitors. They need to understand, the industry, that these are constituents. And so, as a resolution, we're putting forth our position as a city council in creating that environment for that clarity, for that transparency,
right,
and make them aware that we know what they're not doing,
right,
and we're aware of the things they should be doing.
Great.
And this is a respectful way to approach the industry, but making them aware that these are constituents as well.
Great. And if the CLA could prepare the proper letter from my office, from my signature, because there's some studios that are in my district that I have relationships that I like to forward the copy of this resolution and ask them to work in earnest with these wonderful Angelenos. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wesson is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I want to thank Mr. Reyes, Ms. Gruhl. This resolution was heard in my committee last week, and we got it out without any opposition or any pause. This council has been on record, I think, for being pro-worker for a long time. I know I'm proud of my record where it relates to workers throughout this state. But last week or week before last, I had an opportunity to meet two young ladies that came to my office. Well, if I could get them just to stand with Blanca and these two young ladies that came to my office, that are my constituents. And when I sat down and I heard their story, I realized that being a supporter is not enough. It is important for us to send a message to one of the most financially secure, successful entities in this world, that they need to treat their workers respectfully. And I think we need to take the extra step, members. We need to call the heads of these studios. We need to let them hear it from our lips to their ears that we want them to be fair. We are not asking for anything other than fairness. And for my two constituents, I will be there for you, and I'm going to do what I can personally to try to help make sure that you and your family get the physicals that you need and that your children get the proper checkups. I'm going to use whatever little pull I got to try to make that happen. We should unanimously support this resolution and unanimously fight with you, because what you're asking for is just fairness. That's all you're asking for. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. Thank you to all of my colleagues who are part of this, and thank you, Mr. Reyes, for providing your leadership on this, and thank you to everybody who's come here. And I think the message has been heard loud and clear, but let's take a vote to see if indeed our vote reflects that too. So if we can open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. And we will send that forthwith. Thank you very much. We'll send that forthwith to the mayor, and thank you very much for your presence here in council. If we can return to the other items called special, please.
Item 10 was called special for cards from the public.
Okay, on item number 10.
President, can I just
Yes,
introduce
Mr.
a class
Labange.
that has been with us this morning, seeing us. Mr. Dennis Smith's wonderful 5th grade class from Toluca Lake. Please stand up and be recognized by the City Council. Give them a big hand. They got to hear that great discussion there. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange, and welcome to your City Hall. We welcome you here today to Chambers. If I can ask everybody to please try to hold off their conversations as much as possible so we can continue to hear the business that's before us. Item number 10 is before us, and I'd like to invite our two public speakers forward, Joyce Dillard and Sela Berman. Shh. Go ahead, Ms. Dillard.
Okay. The items on the assessment, the Prop K assessment, which is based on the 72 Landscape and Lighting Act. I have several issues here and really a protest. One of these items is going into a nonprofit, and I don't think nonprofits have been addressed. The property owners are being assessed for privatization, and there's no measurement on this assessment over a period of time. That's the Francis Avenue Gardens on List A. It's the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. Secondly, there's an item on List B where MCRA is partner, Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, with LA Unified. Again, public access is not available here. Their meetings are out in odd places. They don't have it accessible with public transportation. They don't have them always ADA accessible, and they're appointed officials. So there's really no public accessibility and accountability. Also on CEQA, you have CEQA is passed through too easily in this city. I am going through old records of Department of Water and Power. I'm finding some of these land issues in this assessment were former reservoirs. There are old pipelines that are abandoned, whether they're water or oil, in records that are about ready to be destroyed with the Department of Water and Power. So I don't really think this assessment is doing the benefit that you claim it's doing. It really needs accountability and measurement. It needs to be in the City of Los Angeles name for any kind of acquisitions, and urban gardens, which is a new category, which is here, urban greening, but it's literally a new category for the city, has not been addressed properly in the charter. And I think until these issues are addressed, it's really not showing a benefit to the taxpayer, and I don't think some of these assessments should be issued at this time until those issues are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila Berman is our next speaker.
Good morning, council members. I'm Sheila Berman, Executive Director of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, and I am just here to speak on behalf of the Prop K proposal going forward. I want to commend the hard work of the RVNOX, the staff, the steering committee, and all of you council members for this process. And it was we really appreciate the fairness of the process, and that we're now here in June and we're ready to go forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Berman. Anybody else wishing to be heard from the public? If not, we will close public hearing on that. Any council members wishing to be heard on this today? It has been our recommendation that we continue this for one meeting, is my understanding, until we have a final report from our Rec and Parks Commission. Is that correct? Okay. So if there is no objection to that, we will continue this one meeting until Friday, which is June 16th. Okay? Next order of business, please.
Item 15 was called special by Councilmember Parks.
Okay, I will now call on Councilmember Bernard Parks of the 8th Council District to speak on this item.
This is an item that, just like Bill, to give us a quick overview. As we've completed our budget and we're moving forward, we've been monitoring the state and their May revised. And I'd like Bill to just give us an update of where the state budget is, not only on the report, if there's any additional information that might be forthcoming as they go through their budget process.
On May 16th, we gave you a report that basically provide information related to the governor's May revision. At that point in time, we stated that the state was seeing an additional $7.5 billion over the governor's January proposed budget. I broke it down on how that money would be spent. Basically, as $2.2 billion for the state's reserve fund, $3.1 billion for to education, $1.6 billion for debt prepayments, $400 million for local hospitals and public health agencies, then $142 million to invest in public safety augmentations. At this point in time, the only impact to our budget is a $2.4 million reduction in the CalWorks program. The budget's going through the legislative process. It appears that it's going through relatively smoothly. We haven't seen any new changes since our May 16th report. If we do see something that has an impact to the city's finances, we'll immediately report through Budget and Finance and then to this council.
Bill, let me just ask, on many of the concerns we've had in past years on safeguards, on city revenue or pass-throughs, have we had any indication that that issue is getting better, or are any of our funds in any greater jeopardy?
There's a yes and no to that. Based on the budget we've seen, we don't have any major concerns. We don't see any money being taken by the state, but we are very, very concerned about the bill that's going through that can impact our cable franchises. You heard Dean Hansel talk about that. I think it's important that we as a city oppose that bill. The potential impact to the city could be between $5 and $9 million. The big problem is that the bill doesn't provide sufficient information to let us know how it will impact our cable franchising fees.
Okay. And so our biggest concern as we look forward in the budget are the issues you've given us already about concerns that may occur in the city that could impact our going forward in next fiscal year. But it appears there's minimal concerns from the state level that may impact us?
And separate and apart from that one bill that's going through the Senate now, it was passed in the Assembly, there are very small concerns related to the state's budget.
And then if you can comment a little bit, just to remind us about the reserve fund and why we tried to pump it up, or for these kinds of potential concerns.
We have a reserve fund that's getting close to the 5% goal established in our financial policies. It's about 4.1% as a consequence of what the action taken by the council. It's about what, 165 million? I think that's it. It's somewhere close to that.
We'll round it at 170.
What?
We'll round it at 170.
We'll round it at 170. What's happening, given that the franchise, the cable franchise issue, the issue related to the IRS decision to stop collecting federal excise tax for long-distance telephone, that can have a huge impact on the city. What's happening in real estate further supports the council's decision to increase the amount of money in the reserve fund to an all-time high.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas.
Mr. Fujioka. I'm just warming up for the next item.
Okay.
I was in contact with some of the legislators over the weekend. It's my understanding that they closed down the conference committee over the weekend. That's where the Republicans and Democrats have their representatives from both the Senate and the Assembly, and they actually put forth their document, basically the legislative budget. It's my understanding that right now, as we speak, they're trying to work things out with the Republicans to see if they can get the two-thirds vote to pass the budget. And I would hope that the governor's helping out in that process since he's a Republican as well. That being the case, based on what you know today, is there anything that you've heard of that might be in jeopardy? Some of the numbers, some of the issues that we're concerned with that might be in jeopardy as those negotiations are going on?
No, I haven't heard any significant changes.
Okay, now the overall general impact of what we see the state doing today based on us doing our budget as a city prior to them for the next coming fiscal year, what is the round figure that hopefully it's come down to? Hopefully not too much.
Well, in terms of
the difference of what we anticipated and what we think they're going to do.
Well, the actual impact to the city will be minimal. What we're seeing right now is a reduction on a CalWorks program. That's a program administered by CDD, but as it relates to our general fund supported programs, even separate apart from the CalWorks program or the grant programs, we see a very, very small impact at this point.
Can you describe for us what the CalWorks program is and then how we implement it here at the local level? My time, please.
Well, it's a grant program that supports employment programs that are administered through CDD. What we've asked CDD to do is once that the impact or the actual dollar amount is finalized, is to come back through council with a report telling you how it will impact the various programs throughout the city that receives money through the CalWorks grant program.
So
so they will be coming back to us.
What's the overall budget scope of last year for that program here at the city level?
Well, I don't have that with me right now.
Roughly?
Bring back.
607, we have $2 million allocated in general city purposes for the same program, and there's also a $2 million set aside in UB for a Learn and Earn program.
Okay. And what seems to be the anticipated impact based on what the state legislature is doing?
A $2.4 million reduction.
Wow. So it's a big part of it.
Yes.
It's a tremendous impact. It's not like, for example, the police department's $1 billion budget and they might be shaving off a couple $1 million. That's something that's much more easily absorbed when you're looking at that economies of scale.
Absolutely.
So we're actually taking a big hit on that category.
And we're all watching that right now because, as you know, what's proposed by the governor, and as it goes through the various steps in the legislative process, what happens at one point and what happens at the final point could be different. So we'll see how that evolves.
And then also, doesn't the legislature have what they call trailer bills after the bulk of the budget is actually done before they adjourn? So we might, not that we should get our hopes up, but we might have another bite at the apple sometime throughout the summer, hopefully. Okay.
Unfortunately, those trailer bills cut both ways sometimes, so we are watching those trailer bills because every so often you'll see something attached to legislation that has that impact to a city like ours that's not well publicized.
Well, one of the things I think it's important for us to remind Angelenos is you're watching a discussion on an item that was agendized, it was noticed to the public that we're going to discuss this item as a legislative body today. But the legislature doesn't have to do that, correct? When we talk about that it cuts both ways, they can actually run a piece of legislation and actually refortify some funds that we were hoping for and give that to us, and we're very grateful when they do that. But they could actually run a bill within a day and actually have it impact us where once again we have to go back to the drawing board and say, oops, they just cut out another $1 million or so or more that we were expecting just a few weeks earlier, correct?
That's true. There should be an appreciation for our level of government because we're much more transparent in the changes to our budget.
Yeah, the thing that I'd like to emphasize to the people of Los Angeles is at any given moment when the legislature's in session, it's a topsy-turvy situation. They could actually help us the way they need to, or they can actually hurt us, and then all of a sudden we have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out how we're going to fill that gap, because all we're trying to do here is provide services. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? If not, let's open the roll on the item, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 16 was called special by Councilmember Cardenas.
Okay, Mr. Cardenas?
Thanks.
Item number 16.
You know, we're going to go to that thing, and then when everybody else goes, we're going to stay, and it's been another 6 days or something. Oh, you'll be back.
Okay, well, we're having that passed out. We're talking right now mainly about tax revenue anticipation notes. And can you describe for the people of Los Angeles basically what that instrument is and then secondarily what we tend to utilize that for? Thank you.
Basically, it's for our cash flow.
Time, please.
And at this point in time, and this was something that has been approved in our budget, at this point in time, we're trying to issue some short-term tax and revenue anticipation notes to be used as followed. There's a report that speaks to the fact that we'll provide our annual contribution to fire and police pension of approximately $280 million, the annual contribution to the city's retirement program of $343 million, and then $150 million to alleviate some short-term cash flow needs that occur early in the fiscal year before we start to receive revenue from the many, many different sources we have. We're asking that we do it today because also as reflected in the report, because we're going to pay our pension and retirement obligations up front very early in the year. This will save the city $21 million. There was a request if we could delay this a couple of days. What Natalie has just passed out is a calendar, and then the various steps we'll be taking, or the timeline for the sale of our Tran. A couple of days doesn't seem like much, but because we need 10 days to publicize this, if we do it today, we can sell on the 27th. If it's delayed, we start bumping into the July 4th holiday, and the markets will be closed. Especially as we get towards the 29th and 30th, and then July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, some of the weekends. Otherwise, the market's sold. On the 6th, your console is dark. We'll have to come back the following week. Know that when we do sell this Tran, because we'll have at least a week before we have to transfer the money to our retirement and lacers. It's our intent to invest this money for that 1 week period, if not possibly even a 2-week period. Every week that we invest it, we can make an additional $700,000 on this money. And so the financial impact is significant for us, especially the savings. We have the lacers and the pension folks are asking us when we're going to sell the Tran, because if they get it earlier, they can in turn add it to their investment pool, which will provide the basis for that $21 million savings. Other comments? Do you have any other comments?
I can understand how much of the business, even bankers, are not going to be involved in transactions on July 4th, and possibly that could even bump into activities on July 5th, et cetera. So it's kind of like a window of 2-3 days that we don't want to bump into, so I understand that. But earlier in the discussion on the side here, what's significant about the industry activities on the 28th of June?
On the 29th, the Federal Reserve is meeting, and although this is short-term debt, there could be some impact where the market wants to wait to see if rates actually do go up. Conventional wisdom has changed now. It looks like the rates will go up again because of the inflation fear. And what's interesting is that short-term has been selling better than longer-term debt because we're so unsure of the economy. So they probably will not allow us to sell on the 28th or on the 30th. And also the 30th is a Friday, and you don't sell debt on a Friday.
Okay.
The market just doesn't because they
Just
can't
because it doesn't.
sell it, right.
Okay.
There's
Now-
too short of a time to actually sell the debt, so they
Now,
won't
is
sell
this
on a Friday.
short-term debt or long-term debt?
This is
here?
short-term. This is considered short-term debt. It's a year long. It's selling right now. A couple big deals have gone forward, and it looks like they're selling at about 3.4, 3.3. If we sell on Tuesday, we're confident we can get about that, 3.3, 3.4. I mean, it really depends on the market.
Sure, we're predicting. We don't know the future,
Yeah,
but
I
we
mean,
can only predict.
What the report, we always give ourselves a cushion, so what the report is showing you is a little closer to 4%, just to give us a cushion. So anything less than that is actually more savings and will reduce the amount we actually sell. But we always ask for more authority to make sure that we have enough to cover ourselves.
Now, the fact that these are called tax and revenue anticipation notes, the word anticipation, I think, is the key
Yes.
identifier as to what we're talking about here. Basically, what we're doing is we're actually going out to the market, and people are trusting that the city of Los Angeles is going to get revenue into the future to pay this off. In the meantime, we're getting someone else's money and using that money for our needs, correct?
Exactly. We get the majority of our general fund revenue the second half of the year. So the first half of the year, we're short. And so we then go to the market and we issue. The question has often been asked, why don't we just borrow internally from special funds? Well, the controller has determined that it makes more sense for us to pay interest on a TRAN than it does to pay interest on the special funds because the interest rate on the TRAN is a little bit less. The pool rate is up quite a bit. So we would have to pay more if we just borrowed internally. And years ago, we used to do that. But now, because of the way the market is backwards a little bit, it actually makes more sense for us to issue.
So how many times in this 12-month period that we're in and rolling forward are we anticipating seeing this kind of transaction? Is
Once.
This once? So this is it?
Yes.
Basically,
We
we've
do it every
calculated-
year about this time.
We've calculated what our needs and responsibilities are, and this action is going to take care of us for the next 12 months. And then next year, we'll have to do this again. The number will probably be different.
Yes.
Hopefully, the rates will be great. If they're not,
Yes.
they're not. That's the market. And we did this last year?
Yes.
And we did it the year before?
We've done it for the past 9 years.
The past 9 years? What did we do before the past 9 years?
We borrowed internally.
Okay.
We
And she
did it,
mentioned this, borrow from the special funds. We would borrow internally.
I believe we did it in the 80s a couple of times, and then we stopped, and then we did it again. I believe we started, I guess in the late 90s, we started to do it once again. Every year during budget time, when the mayor's preparing his prepared budget, we go through and we do the analysis. Does it make sense for us to issue the TRAN? And that's the point in time in February, March, we really look at the numbers and we look at how much savings we'll get from the prepayment of the CRS and LACERs, and then we look at how much the controller will need. Last year, the controller needed more because of the triple flip. They were unsure when revenue would come in. This year, they need $150 million. It really depends on how we are doing financially.
Now I would think your average person watching this hearing would think, well, I don't want my city to use a credit card. I don't want my city to borrow money. I'd rather my city just use the cash that they have. But if they think that, then they missed one of the statements that was made earlier. We don't sit on cash in the city.
No.
We budget for the year, unlike, say, a blue-collar worker who says, look, I'm making $40,000 a year, and I divide that amongst 12 months, and I get the same exact amount of money that I make in January, that I receive in June, that I receive in December. But what happens in the city, as was mentioned earlier, we get our revenues in bulk and chunks in different times, and we have a period of time which we're thin, and we don't actually collect a lot of money, and the latter part of the year we do. But we have to kind of like average that out for the year, correct?
Exactly.
So what I'm getting at is what we're doing here, we're really not borrowing on a credit card like somebody would if they were just kind of borrowing not in a good financial sense. The proof that this makes good financial sense is the rating that we have as a city, and the fact that this transaction is not going to hurt us, or is it?
No, we actually have the top rate. Short-term debt has a little bit different type of rating than long-term debt, and we actually received the very top rating from all three rating agencies on this because they're so sure we are going to get the revenue.
In how we handle our short-term debt. And also, what the public needs to recognize is that by paying pensions and LACERs up front, we're actually saving money. There's a net savings of $2.4 million as a consequence of this transaction. But in our report on the second page, it speaks to the just the almost $21 million alone we're saving as in the form of a premium we're getting back from LACERs and pension for paying them up front. So we've structured this to absolutely benefit the city. Some folks would think, well, you're going to borrow money, you're paying interest. Oh my God, you're losing money. But in fact, by borrowing this money and then subsequently paying an obligation up front, we're saving the long-term interest on that money, and as a consequence, saving the city money. So this is a good financial deal for us.
I'm glad you explained that, Mr. Fujioka, because I know that what you're saying is true. It's counterintuitive to the way people are taught about money. But the fact of the matter, I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to get that on the record. Because if somebody tries to tell us that we're not, I enjoy that they would actually hopefully go through the exercise and realize that although it sounds kind of funny, it is true. This is a way in which we're being responsible. We're actually doing what's right for the city. We're actually saving the taxpayers and the ratepayers and everybody in the city money. And also, I'm glad that you pointed out the fact that this is short-term debt and it's actually handled, the ratings are handled differently and the rate, et cetera. But if we make short-term debt bad decisions, it actually does, in fact, affect us on our long-term standing and our overall rating as a city.
Absolutely.
No question. But collectively, as a group, this city is viewed as a very well-managed financial institution. Okay. As a group, we do a very, very good job in managing our finances.
Well, just one more point. We're a very well-managed city, and our rating shows that we stand very high on those ratings. Are we perfect?
No.
No.
Okay.
No one is.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much. Bill, one thing I was going to ask you is that in this process of TRAN, is it part of our ongoing budget that we just approved?
Yes. Yes, it was approved in the budget as part of that structure.
As an instruction. So this is basically carrying out what the instruction is?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to clarify, you mentioned that in the past, if we didn't do this, we borrowed money, but also didn't we get ourselves in somewhat of a bind in that we often didn't pay on time for pension, and in that delay, it may have cost us money? In the sense of delaying?
Any delay in paying our pension obligations would have a financial impact. The fact we can pay it up front will allow us to realize the premium that I mentioned, this $21 million premium.
So we get a discount for the early?
We get a discount.
And then also, if I understand correctly, by borrowing this money, we invested for a period of time, so we, in addition, make money on the borrowed money?
Yes, we'll make about $700,000.
Okay. At the beginning, there's two sides of this. At the beginning, when we borrow the money, because we're selling and receiving the money on July 12th, and then we're turning it over to pensions and CRS, we're investing it for about 7 days.
Yeah.
On the back end, as revenue comes in, we're required by the bond documents themselves to set aside revenue to make sure that we have the money to pay the debt service on June 29, 2007. That's where there's $10 million of additional interest the general fund is allowed to keep.
Okay.
So that's where also the savings comes from. It's not also the fact that we get the prepayment, but the general fund also grosses about $10 million in interest. So when you add everything together and you minus out the debt service, the net The net savings, the general fund is 2.4. That's how we come up with that number. It's the amount of investment, it's the amount of savings minus the debt service itself.
Okay, and so when we save that, then it gives us a chance to allocate more general funds to what our primary task is, because we're not paying it into
Yes.
debt service or more interest.
Yes, how we manage our debt and and then our cash flow needs is extremely critical to the city.
Does this help us, the way we're doing this or structuring it, help us at all on the structural deficit and how we move forward, that we're not adding to it? Or
We're
does it
definitely
impact-
not adding to it.
Okay, we're not adding to it, but if we did not construct or create something and we had to then go into more debt, or we created more interest?
Absolutely. The issue, the structural deficit issue is extremely complex. It can only be answered through the sum of many, many different actions. This is one of those critical actions that adds to our ability to manage our finances to eliminate that structural problem.
Okay, so they said our approval today, what, give us one more time a timeline of what your actions will be upon approval today.
Upon approval, excuse me, upon approval today, we have a 10-day publication requirement. So we will publish on June 16th, and we will sell on June 27th.
And is that charter mandated?
Yes.
Mandated by law or charter?
Yes, we have a 10-day publication by law
By
to
law,
let the
okay.
public know that we're selling any type of debt. That's
Okay.
for all of our debt program. Then on June 27th, we will actually accept bids, and the council will award those bids on June 27th. It takes about 2 weeks for us to do all the mandatory paperwork required by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The money will come into the city on July 12th, and then we will pay lacers and pension on July 19th.
Okay, and because of the timeline and the critical dates, that's why you also ask us, if we're not in session, that you have the ability to move
Correct.
forward.
Correct. In case there's not a quorum here at City Hall, or you're not in session, we request authority. And we've only done that once, that I recall, in the 5.5 years I've been in this position, that we've done that. And if that occurs, then we come back the next day and we tell you what the results are. So it is on the council's record, and you are then informed of what happened.
Okay.
But
Thank
we
you.
don't like to do that. We'd
Oh,
rather
yeah,
have
I
you award the bid.
I know, but I think you put us on notice by, in the direction, that's, you asked for that just in case we're unavailable.
Just in case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? If not, let us open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote on this item.
14 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item 19 was called special by Councilmember Smith.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just ask the city clerk to come forward. My motion was to ask the city departments to look at the improvements that have been put in by bids that could become a liability of the city if bids close down. And we saw one in Granada Hills that was closing. We saw some requirements for us to take over some of their properties that they had improved. Now it became a responsibility of the city. This report really didn't analyze it in that way. You went a different direction, and the recommendation is now to note and file. So I want to hear from the city clerk on what you intend to do about the potential out there for liability to the city for picking up trash, maintaining easements, maintaining medians, things like that are being put in by bids, that when they close down eventually may fall back on the city. And I don't think we did really analyze it, but you have a plan. I'd like to hear it, because the recommendation is note and file. And so I want to hear how you're going to do it if we don't do an action.
Right. What we intend to do is 3 or 4 items. First of all, to work with the bid consortium, which is the collection of the bid operators, to work on this issue to make sure we identify all of these potential liabilities that might exist out there, so we have a good inventory. Then number 2, work with Public Works and other agencies of the city that would in fact become responsible on two measures. One, looking at the improvement, they may say, hey, it's worth taking over because the improvement is so good in what's been made. Number 2, if it's not, then what should we tell the bid to do in case they cease to exist? Also, to work with those entities as new bids come online or existing bids get ready to make improvements and they're getting ready to issue permits, to get with us and the bid at that point to talk about ongoing maintenance should the bid cease to exist. So I think by taking those kind of measures, we put ourselves in a good position. In many cases, we did analyze the one median strip that, there's several median strips that were put in, and the ongoing maintenance has been very minimal, so it may in fact be a benefit to the city to go ahead and take on that responsibility. And then finally, as brand new bids come on board, if they are planning to do any improvements in the public right-of-way, to make sure that issue is addressed up front in the planning stages of the bid.
Okay, well, absent an action by the council to put a policy in place, how will you do that then? You're just going to do that internally as a policy?
We'll make the commitment today. We're going to do that as part of our overall administration of the bid program.
All right. With that in mind, I go ahead and accept the receive and file recommendation since the department will take care of it internally. And thank you very much, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else wish to be heard on this item? If not, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, we'll go to the next item.
Item 27 was being held on the desk for the committee report, which has now been circulated.
All right, anybody wish to be heard on that? If not, let's open the roll on the TCT report, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item 28 was called special by Councilmember Reyes.
Okay, we will call on Councilmember Ray.
Efficiency. Please hold my time. Good afternoon, folks. Just some quick questions for the record. What is the current reporting requirements from the departments to the council when it comes to these goals and minority business and women-owned business? Are there any requirements, reporting requirements to the from the departments to the council when it comes to meeting their goals?
There currently are no reporting requirements from the departments.
Okay. Have there been any goals set by the city about local participation?
There is a local business preference that is established by the city through ordinance and the administrative code. Except for that, the minority and women contracting requirements or levels of participation are analyzed and provided for by each awarding authority at the time that they send out the invitation for bids or for proposals. And of necessity, that's what needs to occur, because it has to be a fact-specific determination by the awarding authority of what the level of participation, what the availability of minority and women contractors in the community is, so that they can ensure a reasonable level be specified, rather than having a hard and fast specification across the board. That's what the cases require.
So we don't have a set of goals. We have one element, if you will, of a goal that goes through the process you just described.
Right. And if I may, because of the number of cases that have come out in the last 15 to 20 years in this area, even goals are now a problematic. While we can use that for discussion purposes, I just want to explain that we're not, even under the applicable case law, authorized to set these goals and to require compliance with the goals. The most that can be done, and this was pointed out in the recent Supreme Court, within the last few years, state Supreme Court decision, is they pointed to our outreach program and said that was about the most that can be done by local entities in terms of minority and women contracting requirements. That is, to require the primes to conduct an outreach to ensure as much participation as possible.
The bottom line is fairly nebulous how we interpret good faith. We're asking for good faith efforts.
Yes.
And that's as far as we go.
Correct. Correct.
Now, when you look at, when we compare other entities like MTA and other agencies, there is a stronger sense of commitment. There are contract distributions, how they are able to recycle their dollars within this particular target group. How can we reach that level of effectiveness? Put it this way, if we got a report to each council office as to who is participating when contracts come out. We are in a position to perhaps boost up the awareness, let those companies know that these other companies exist in our district. What I'm trying to do is stimulate in a more informal, along the lines of good faith, getting to those goals without having to put ourselves in the legal position where we're jeopardizing our posture as a municipality, but being more emphatic and more insistent in hiring locally with minority and women-owned businesses.
The question is a good one, and I think obviously the mechanisms that we have vary from awarding authority to awarding authority, and again, we're talking about the contracts that are led by the various departments, the most significant of which very likely is the Public Works Department for these types of contracts. They do have ConAd that enforces these requirements, but I think what you're talking about is finding ways to better communicate the city's contracting processes and contracting requirements to those potential contractors. And also, once an award is made and a contract is signed, and Public Works, I think, is probably a good example of this, they have a subcontractor participation requirement, so that they require actually a certain percentage be subcontracted out, not by ethnicity, not by gender, but a certain amount be subcontracted out. In conjunction with that, they also require this outreach and communicating those requirements so that people understand and potential contractors understand that there is that and there's the enforcement for the outreach. I think it would go a long way to accomplishing what you're talking about.
I know there's a report back request as a result of our action today. I want to add a couple of elements to the report back, but I see my time has run out. Okay, what I'd like to do is two things. One is request that we get reports sent to each council office for the contracts that are being made available to the general public, allow us to advocate for those small businesses, the printers, all the landscapers. We have a whole range of businesses out there that are having a hard time getting into that place in which they can compete. Language barriers, who to approach, etc. We want to facilitate that, and in many ways try to achieve a certain level of efficiency in getting the dollars recycled in our own city. Two, there's an element that we have been discussing in committee, that is increasing the requirements, and this is on a slightly different subject matter, but the same issue of recycling our dollars, is having each contractor perform in such a way where they can demonstrate they're hiring youth, creating jobs for youth. This is something we talked about in our ad hoc committee for youth and gangs, something we talked about with our Public Works, our deputy mayor. Again, that's part of the report back. I'd like to see is how do we strengthen that requirement, whether it's in a point system or whatever mechanism you feel is appropriate, that each contractor demonstrate that they're hiring young people from our city so that they can have access to jobs. Since it is our city dollars that we are granting them as a result of this competition, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't require them to hire our young people if they're going to benefit from our tax dollars. And that's something I'd like to see reported back as a formal request.
We can look into those and report back, I think.
Now, Council President, should I make that as a form of a motion or just as a part of the report back to make sure it happens?
I think part of the report back is fine. We can add that as an addition.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Carter, okay, thank you. Mr. Cardenas, followed by Mr. Weezer.
Thank you. When somebody contracts with the city right now, we basically ask them, in most cases, we'll ask them to try to outreach and see if they can have minority or women-owned businesses as subcontractors, right? It's an ask, it's not a requirement.
No, actually, it's a requirement that they actually conduct that outreach. And if they don't, if they fail to establish that they did conduct that outreach, they're eliminated from participating in the process. It's the outreach, however, that we can focus on. The courts have told us a number of times that we can't focus on attaining the particular levels of participation. But the outreach, if it's not conducted, then that's cause for not consideration.
So basically what we're allowed to do as a city, even post-2009 and with the court decisions that have been made and the precedent that's set, we can actually require higher levels of outreach. For example, we can tell them, you need to put into 3 publications of interest, Or we could tell them, you need to do at minimum 10 publications of interest, or can we get involved in that, or are we not?
A reasonable requirement for publication, yes, within reason, and there are a number of requirements that are spelled out in the good faith elements that the various city departments have. The number of publications is one of them. There is a minimum that's required, but if they go beyond that, it clearly satisfies the requirement.
So we can raise the minimum, as long as it's reasonable.
Conceivably, and again, that's something that we can address in the report back.
Yeah, I'd like you to address that in the report back, because one thing that is, I've actually had people who work for government, and I've actually had people who own private companies tell me that because of Proposition 209, they can't even do outreach to emphasize a particular want or need for people to apply if they're women or minority, and that's just not true. 209 has to do with hiring practices, not outreach practices. And if it's my understanding, if I understand correctly, the actual, when it was challenged in court, it was both the governor and the then Attorney General that actually said that outreach was not the intent of 209. It was about hiring practices, admission practices. Time, please.
There was actually a part of the challenge in the high voltage wire case against San Jose that challenged the outreach requirement itself. And in that case, in one of the, I believe it was a concurring decision, one of the state Supreme Court justices pointed to our City of LA program and said, no, outreach is permissible, and here's one instance in which it's formulated correctly and can be conducted. So it has been part of challenges. I don't know what position the AG or the governor have taken on that, but it also been upheld by the state Supreme Court. In addition, they upheld, and I think it's of significance to the city and to other governmental entities that are interested in remedying and addressing the situation, the social situations that they have before them, the gathering of the data about the ethnicity and gender of contractors so that they can test what the market is and know whether there's adequate participation or not.
Okay. Now, also, when it comes to these requests that eventually become requirements that they need to adhere to, when it comes to the outreach and showing good faith and that they did a reasonable outreach, do we require them to give us proof of that?
Absolutely.
In what form do we ask them for that proof?
Depending on which of the elements we're talking about, for example,
Time, please.
the ads that they place in industry newspapers and other newspapers, we require copies of the ads, and I believe, and although Condat can probably address this more directly, I believe we require a copy of the receipt for payment for them.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Our next speaker is Mr. Huizar.
Thank you very much. And we're going to expect a report back in 60 days on this, correct? That's what the motion is. And as you could probably tell by the conversation that's happening here, there's a lot of interest in making sure that we do this right, and there's a lot of interest in making sure that we have a fair playing field for small businesses and MeeBee-Weebee businesses to participate in the contracting processes of the City of Los Angeles. But I want to emphasize one point that I think is important in what we're going to study here, and that is to really clarify what can and what can't we do as a city, and because an issue that Councilmember Cardenas raised is that there's a perception out there now that Proposition 209 passed, we can't do anything. Or people are afraid even to really do as much as we can to ensure that there's a fair playing field for these firms. So I'm really looking forward to the report so that we get that clarified. We understand it ourselves, the departments understand it, and so we could do the best possible outreach that we can do. Coming from the school district where we have, I was there for 4 years, where we had one of the largest public works programs in the country. I authored the policy for the school district to have a goal of 25% small business participation in all our contracting. And I did it not only for our public works projects, but also I said for all contracting in the district. It was the first ever policy we had of that nature. But the district was very afraid to go out there and do outreach, and it didn't really, I found that even though we had a policy out there, it was people's understanding of what we can and cannot do that really affected our ability to really fulfill the goals of that policy. I think that's a very critical point, and I hope that is as clear as can be in black and white about what can and can't we do as a city to continue to promote this. My final question is, the report itself will tell us how we have been doing as a city in contracting with MeBe-Weebies. Is that, it's going to give us data on those types of things?
It's not my understanding that was part of the request, and I don't know that even in 60 days that kind of data can be gathered and compiled and presented to you in any kind of intelligible manner. I have to tell you that a number of years ago, the City Council did hire a consultant to do that kind of a task for the purpose of establishing a basis to have actually a preference more than an outreach. And that effort came to naught simply because the magnitude of the task and gathering all those kinds of records from the many awarding authorities that the city has was just amazingly difficult.
I don't want to muddle this motion because I think this in itself is going to take some work. It's got some progress now, but I would ask the author of this motion, Mr. Cardenas, and our council president, and our author of this motion, Mr. Cardenas, if in the future we can do a motion or to request the data as to how we've been doing in meeting our targets, because even after we complete this, you've got that, even after we complete this, that's another piece of the puzzle, and I'd like to kind of coordinate that because they go hand in hand, and I'm very interested in talking to our CLA as well as to how we could go forward, and then I think they would probably...
Do you want to make that a formal motion, Mr. Weiser?
Well, I asked right now if we could do that, but the city attorney has advised me that's going to take quite a bit. I don't know if we should do that through here, or I just, you brought this motion, Mr. Cardenas. I don't want to muddle up this motion. It's got...
No, what you just described, Councilmember Weiser, is the ongoing effort that we need to take to make sure that we move this forward. So that's an excellent complement to what this has already started.
And we need to get to a place where we're getting quarterly reports on how our city is doing, the departments are doing in each of these areas, and to report to the appropriate committee. To build that infrastructure, I'm not sure if it's possible to do it through this motion, or maybe we could sit down, think more comprehensively about how we may want to approach this. But okay,
Thank you, Mr.
I'll work
Weiser.
with the author of this motion to,
We can
because
address
I think
that.
it goes hand in hand with what we're trying to do here.
And as a point of information also, Mr. Weiser, we have a small and local business advisory committee that was constituted between the mayor's office and the council in our previous mayoral administration, but that's still alive and is a good entity also looking at that and has a whole host of recommendations on small and local businesses. That could be an appropriate place perhaps to get some of that comment. And the co-chair of that, Ms. Gruhl, is our next speaker.
So what a perfect segue, Mr. Garcetti, in doing that. We did set up a small local business advisory committee, and part of the recommendations that are included in the budget and finance report and those items that were discussed in audits and government efficiency in September specifically talked about coordinating the SLBAC, as we call it, with this motion, because as Mr. Reyes mentioned in his opening remarks, that there are some other entities who do a better job in the numbers that they have as far as local preferences, and we looked at small business local preferences. And so part of what we included in the Budget Committee recommendations was reporting back on that coordination, because the report, and Mr. Garcetti and I co-chaired that with then mayor, but we've also talked to the current mayor about moving these items forward, because I believe, if I'm correct, that in MTA they have a small local business preference that also then, when you look at those numbers, demonstrates the minority participation as well. Minority and women-owned participation is much greater in some of those areas. And I think that what we've heard today and to the public is the importance of looking at local businesses and many of those minority and owned businesses, again, within our legal constraints of ensuring that we provide services and access and all that to the local businesses that are here in Los Angeles, and particularly those that are minority and women-owned. So just so we know that there is a recommendation as part of the report backs that they're coming with is to look at the SL back recommendations. I had a chance to talk to Gene Hale the other day, who chaired that for a while, and his interest in moving those items forward, because I think they have some great recommendations that complement this motion that was introduced, and their recommendations came forward probably close to, unfortunately, over a year ago in this discussion. So we look forward to that coming forward, and thank you to the leadership of Mr. Cardenas in introducing the motion originally, and Mr. Reyes for his addition, which I think, again, looking at hiring some of our local young people. We know that the path to success is not only education, but it's jobs, and creating those jobs and making sure that the businesses have some interest in hiring individuals. So I just wanted to stand in support and to make sure people understood that we were adding the SL back recommendations as part of this review. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Rule. Mr. Labange, to be followed by Mr. Reyes.
Just a question. Does anyone know the new police administration building across the street? Are you familiar with that building?
The what, I'm
The
sorry?
new police administration building, right across from City Hall, the new police. Someone
Yes.
told me only one contractor bidded on that job. Is that correct?
I do not know that, I'm sorry.
But if they did, that's not good, is it?
I would
You
think
want, how
not.
many, what do we want on contract? We want like 5 or 7 or 10 people to bid on it, right?
Of course.
So hopefully, we just want to focus, and could we also ask that someone look at what city has the best practice, that also has the best guidelines as we do to make sure that we touch all the bases and try to be fair and inclusive, but at the same time, what has the best practices? Because it is, Mr. Miller, have you heard that only one person bid on City Hall across the street? Not City Hall, police replacement
On the new
building.
police headquarters building, I don't believe the bids are in, but I think the expectation, a couple of major bidders I do know indicated they're not going to bid.
Right.
Because of Katrina rebuilding and all kinds of stuff, essentially the contractors are very, very busy. So it's,
Right.
you know, partly that's, but again, that would be the general contractor. The issue before you hear the outreach, the participation, that's really sort of a separate issue.
Okay.
There may only be one general contractor that bids.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to the public record. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I want to thank the folks at the table for your hard work. Again, the intention here is how we strengthen our ability to strategize and, within the law, maximize our efficiency in getting these contracts out to local businesses in Los Angeles and for our youth. To that end, I wanted to ask my colleague, Councilman Wesson, and this is a friendly motion. I think it complements Councilman Cardenas' goals. If we can have the report come to HCD as well as an economic development element. When we talk about economic development, we're talking about how we bring jobs, how we bring dollars into the city. And so understanding the contracts, understanding our requirements, understanding our efforts, maximizing our ability as a city. Each council office has its way of working its constituencies. If we can put that under this consideration of this committee, we have CDD at the table, we have other departments, housing, all interconnected. Now, I know it sounds like we're complicating things more, but I'm really looking towards a partnership with the mayor's office. I know Deputy Mayor Larry Frank has been very interested in this dynamic of how we bring dollars into our youth and how we create access for our youth to these contracts. I know our commissioner from Public Works, David Sickler, under contract administration, has been beating the bushes in Public Works, trying to figure it out. I imagine he's being covered by paperwork in terms of how you do things and how you don't do things. Again, this is trying to get jobs for our youth, making our dollars work more efficiently and leverage our resources and our ability to communicate and strategize. So I want to ask Councilman Wesson if you would accept this motion to have the report go to your committee as well, to complement Councilman Cardenas, because he's also chairing the Youth Gang Committee. And I think we're all heading in the same direction. And I think we all sit in the same committees. But this is, again, to formalize and strategize and put the necessary policy language in place to ensure that recirculation of dollars.
Mr.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Wesson.
Mr. President, I would gladly love to have this item sent to committee, and it's something, again, Mr. Cardenas is on that committee, Mr. Reyes, it's something that we all care deeply about, so we would welcome this with open arms.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, well, if that is the order of the day, we will refer that to ACD, and if there's no objection to that.
Actually, Mr. President, you should vote on the item with the friendly amendments,
Okay, and then we'll send the remaining part to
with the
ACD.
last additional instruction to
Okay.
send it to the Housing Committee as well.
Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
Council President, just
Oh,
for
yeah, I'm
sake
sorry.
of clarity, I want
Yes,
to make
Mr.
sure that we're including reports to each council office. Was that part of the directives? Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next order of business, please, or next item.
Item 44 was called special by Councilmember Hahn. There were cards from the public, and there has been 2 amending motions circulated on this item.
Okay, Ms. Hahn? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Before that, Mr. Cardenas has just an introduction of some special visitors that are here in council chambers.
Thank you very much. Speaking of jobs and youth, we have some of our youth from Vina Elementary who will be in the workforce hopefully soon. But go to college first, the best thing to do. They're from Vina Elementary, and they actually visited the newly renovated Getty House or museum, and now they're here to visit City Hall. So I told them, you got to make sure you go to the Tom Bradley Room on the 26th floor so you can see your beautiful city, and welcome to your city council chambers, Vina Elementary.
Welcome to City Council Chambers. Thanks for visiting us. Ms. Hahn, we have 2 speaker cards. Would you like to open first or hear from the speakers first?
I want to set the stage a little bit for
Okay.
everyone, so I think the public comments will be more meaningful to us. Colleagues, what we have before us today is a resolution that I want us to support so that we can send a loud message to the FAA that we oppose their recent decision on a piece of the Community Benefits Agreement. If you remember, the Community Benefits Agreement was negotiated and signed off between LAWA and the LAX Coalition for Economic, Environmental, and Educational Justice. You remember this was a part of us moving forward with the LAX Master Plan. And this Community Benefits Agreement sets forth a range of community benefits, and it has an ongoing role for this coalition in implementation of these benefits. One of the key programs that was negotiated, that was worked on, that was agreed upon, that was really brought forward to the FAA was an employment program. And this was a job training program and first source hiring program, retention of minority-owned and women-owned business enterprises, and many LAX residents who would be in line to be hired for some of the jobs that are happening at LAX as a result of this master plan. The first one really moving forward quickly, which is the South Runway project. There was $3 million that we had agreed upon that the airport would contribute to this idea of hiring people in the community, hiring those who are affected and impacted negatively by the operations of LAX. And we were very disappointed when the FAA recently issued a letter saying that they did not believe that airport revenues could be used for general economic development, marketing, and promotional activities that are unrelated to the airport, which makes me believe that they really just didn't get it. They interpreted this really wrongly, and that we should, not take this sitting down, again, since this was a big part of how we all moved forward together, and it was really negotiated with a lot of stakeholders. So we think they interpreted this wrong. We think they took a very narrow view of what this is. This is not general economic development by any means. That has nothing to do with the airport. This was a specific jobs program that we felt would really benefit the communities that are impacted by the airport. So I hope you'll agree today to send this resolution, which opposes that. We are planning to travel to Washington, D.C. With the coalition to get face-to-face with those who are in control of the FAA and make our case that this indeed is a good use of airport revenue funds and well within what we believe the airport can spend its revenue for. So I hope you'll agree with us, send a loud message that we oppose this, and then move forward from there. So I would love to have your support on this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. We'll go to public comment. We have two cards that were submitted, and Cipriano Collin and Flor Barajas Tena.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Flor Barajas Tena, policy analyst with the LA Alliance for a New Economy, as well as a member of the LAX Coalition for Economic, Environmental, and Educational Justice. We are a year and 4 months into the implementation of the LAX Community Benefits Agreement, and we believe that just as it took a considerable amount of political will to negotiate and pass this landmark CBA, we need the same amount of political will and the day-to-day work of the LAX Coalition with LAWA to implement these commitments and make them real. The LAX Coalition feels encouraged by the leadership that the Council is demonstrating today by bringing this resolution forward, which is a real step in demonstrating to the FAA that the low-income communities east of the airport, including South Los Angeles, Lenox, and Inglewood, are not alone. The CBA is a model that airports must consider if they want to lessen community resistance to modernization plans. And again, I just want to reiterate that we feel that this is an important step in developing a strategic approach in overturning the regional FAA opinion. And I want to thank especially Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Parks, as well as Councilmember Rosendahl for bringing this resolution forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, City Council members. My name is Cipriano Collin, and I represent the workers at LAX. I am a member of the LAX coalition. The workers are patiently awaiting the opportunities that the master plan will bring in terms of permanent and construction jobs. The airport is an important economic engine, and we feel strongly that the political pressure will allow us to get the program described in the CBA. At the end of the day, the job training program that we want to see is not a symbolic representation of the existing program, but one that will help the most impacted communities east of the airport. Thank you for your leadership in this issue.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker from the council is Tony Cardenas, to be followed by Bill Rosendahl and then Bernard Parks.
I remember back in the day when we started working on this community benefits plan, we were all young and full of hope and expectation, and here we are with the federal government striking it down, but we're not going to give up. What I wanted to do is go through a bit of how this culminated into the agreement that it is, and what exactly did the FAA give in their opinion that they cannot approve of it. My time, please. Anybody?
Yes, sir. Jim Ritchie, Planning and Development, LA World Airports. I think the simple answer to a lengthy opinion letter by the FAA refusing the jobs program tied around their belief that it was an economic development program rather than it being one that was crafted directly to generate jobs at the airport, or more importantly, tied to airport operations. So it was a fine point that they took. We believe we have a compelling response to go back to them on, while at the same time, while we pursue resolution of the initial request and a follow-up to Councilwoman Hahn's emphasis on that, should we fail a second time, we have alternative approaches to come at it from a different direction.
Can you give us an example of what of those come at it examples could be?
Well, maybe a good one is some of the local programs that we have that have long gone unadvertised across the city at the airport. We have a very large intern program, ambassador program, gateway program. There's a program called SNAP. I forget the acronym, that is a job training program, that are authorized programs and were well understood by the coalition, by us, as we went forward to negotiate a job training program. Mr. Smart to my right and I felt we could press the envelope of not just relying on those, but taking that a step further. So, for example, those programs very likely can be grown. We want to stay the course with the original request that you approved, $3 million a year for 5 years. We think we're on solid ground, but we'll fall back to alternative approaches. The other approaches that, while not fully fleshed out at this time, are taking advantage of tying in directly, as the FAA said, direct airport operations. We have a variety of upcoming contracts, rather large, that we believe we could take advantage of in a more subtle fashion, maybe than taking a neon sign and putting a dollar value up front over a period of time there.
Does the FAA, for some reason, distinguish between someone who might be wielding a hammer at an airport or doing some construction work versus someone who's handling baggage or somebody who's checking someone in or providing security?
No, sir. Those would be considered airport operations.
Yeah, so can you give me an example of what we might be thinking, that they're thinking, that the kinds of jobs that they don't approve of?
Well, for example, I mean, I heard it used by them. For example, we have a McDonald's stores throughout the terminals, and to train somebody to serve hot food may not be considered an airport job. That's a simple and kind of a silly example, but more to the point. We have recently, as TSA has gone through personnel problems and with their recruiting, we've even exposed CDD in a relationship with them to take full advantage within the city to put together those two forces, CDD and TSA, as they search for candidates throughout the city. That's a related byproduct of our efforts at establishing this job program.
How many workers on an average day at LAX are at that airport in a given day? I mean, 500, 5,000? Just a rough figure.
We have about 50,000 employees badged. I really couldn't give you a breakdown.
Okay, so better than on a given day, we have approximately 50,000 employees that are part of the LAX place, the operations of. Some of them might not even step on the grounds, but they actually are employed at LAX, have to do with LAX operations. Many of them do step on the grounds on a daily basis or very frequently to get their work done. My point is this: I just have no idea how the federal government, the FAA, can give an opinion that doing training and outreach and including constituents affected by the airport to learn how to work with the airport can be denied. I'm just at a loss for what any reasoning could be, because there's probably not a job in the LA region that doesn't apply at one time or other to activity related directly to the operations of LAX. Can you think of a job?
No,
I mean, we literally have people having to look at butterflies at LAX, and that's part of operations. We have people who are sweeping. That's part of LAX operations. We have people who have canine dogs to make sure that there are no bombs or anything of that nature, or drugs. They're just job after job after job. We have engineers. We have lawyers. We have people who just do daily cleaning of rooms, things of that nature. I can't conceive of a job that isn't part of this package, this community benefits agreement, that isn't directly applicable to someone who could and eventually probably will be hired at LAX.
And we feel the same way. We're probably not as articulate as you are on it, but that's the approach we plan to take back to FAA.
Well, I started working on this when I was the chairman of the committee. I'm not anymore, but if there's any help that you would like, or if you'd like me to go with you to Washington, I've already done it before. I'll be more than happy to do it again. I'm just disappointed, to say the least, that the federal government would deny us this opportunity to be the proper neighbor, the proper stewards, the proper responsible party when it comes to what our relationship has to be and should be and needs to be with the community and our responsibilities of running one of the largest airports in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman, one of the things, I'm William Smart. I served as a chief negotiator for the community on the community benefits agreement. One of the things that we are encouraged about, if you remember back in November of 2004, we went to the FAA and we met with Administrator Blakely. And at that time, she talked about how excited she was about this, about the possibilities. This letter came from the regional. And while I'm sure she's tied into that, we want to go back to her to get her to remind her of her commitment and see that this time that we can get some resolution while we're there meeting with her, because she did affirm it.
Thank you very much for that clarification. It gives us some continued hope that the person at the top will in fact see it the way we anticipated they would see it and opine. But one last point is, when you look at the activity that we're engaging in there, the billions of dollars over the coming decade and more, to look at $3 million a year and for them to not understand how important that is and how minor, actually, unfortunately, how minor that investment is compared to the entire picture, it's just unbelievable that they would give that opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl is our next speaker, to be followed by Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to second my colleague Janice Hahn's motion, we had it before committee today, and it's very clear that maybe the FAA didn't understand what they were doing, and by passing this resolution, it just gives another arrow in the quiver for Ms. Hahn when she goes back to Washington on it. Our Amendment A is just a friendly amendment that clearly handles a typo and also makes sure that we put both the Lennox and the Englewood settlement in it, which I know is just a clarification more than anything else. So that friendly amendment, we also want to get everybody to move on. But Amendment B, we'd like to send that one back to committee for further understanding if we could. And I'd like to get, Mr. Ritchie, your opinion of that B. What we need to do is just vet it a little bit more, but give Ms. Hahn right now the opportunity to move forward with the resolution. What's your thoughts on that, B?
I have two thoughts on that. One, your amendment, or item B, that motion is certainly consistent with Councilman Parks' motion sometime past, as in the fundamental document, we split out the allocation of those funds. I want to say it was 2/3 to the city, 1/3 to the project impact area, Englewood, Lennox. So it's certainly consistent with where we've been in the past. Technically, in the CBA, that was a component of the First Source Hiring Program, which, as you know, has been to date rejected by the FAA. Now, setting that issue aside, and the $200,000 that was put into that document, I mentioned previously that we are currently in the process of developing alternative plans should we fail. How is it that we plus up the things we know for certain that we can do? So should the First Source hiring component of the document fail, I see no problem with that commitment at $200,000 going into programs that we're iron certain are acceptable and tied to then the proportionality that Councilman Parks suggested. I see no problem.
Great, and we appreciate Mr. Parks taking leadership on it, because it obviously has it, but at this particular point, we want to go in strong and we want to go in committed, and we don't want to show any potential other options that might cause concerns. That's why we want to bring it back to committee. Obviously, you heard my colleague speak, and anybody who's watching this on TV has. It's basically those 4 quick points. The job training program directly benefits the employers at the airport by providing trained workers who have already been security screened. The jobs program provides benefits to those directly impacted by the airport operation. The FAA's decision is a narrow interpretation of the federal law, and it does undermine the trust that was built during the negotiations process. So we look forward, colleagues, to you supporting this resolution as well as supporting the friendly Amendment A. Thank you.
Is there a second to that motion to send it back to committee, item 44B?
We need a second for that.
Ms. Hahn will second that. Mr. Parks is our next speaker.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. One thing I'd just like to say is when we went through this process, maybe it seems like decades ago now, but it was maybe a year or so ago, the number one concern when I was sitting over there was that we'd be right where we are today because we kept saying we had no agreement with FAA at the time, and the concern would be that we'd get to a point, we'd approve a plan, and then the FAA would say no, which seems to be where we are. And so my concern is that we've talked on this airport deal of somewhere between 9 and 11 to 13 billion dollars. If we just dealt with 10% of that, it's 900 million. If 1%, it's 90 million. And yet FAA is saying they can't come to grips with 3 million per year. And when we go through, and the reason I got involved in this whole airport deal is we were concerned that the issues were only affecting Inglewood and the immediate areas around the airport, and there's no consideration for the planes that fly over the 8th, 9th, and the 10th district day in and day out with little consideration for mitigation. And so what my concerns are is we're at a point now where we're going to have to go back to Washington and not only convince them that the program is good, but overturn a decision that was made locally that says these are the legal restraints in doing this. What I'm concerned with, because we also, under the leadership of Mr. Garcetti in the Housing Committee, we took 1.5 years to negotiate how the $3 million was going to be spent. That currently now doesn't exist. What we were able to do is go back in the CBA and show that under one of your paragraphs, you identified that if this program did not come to pass, that there would be a commitment from LAWA of $200,000 per year to the year 2015, and that's on the agreement page 13, E2, that money would be used for commitment to funding training programs that are identified in page 31 on Roman numeral 15. What we'd like to see is that in this interim, and I realize we want to go back to Washington, there's no real sense of what Washington is going to do, but we believe that it should be an obligation of LAWA to move forward on the $200,000 per year in that programming in the interim so that we can get these jobs, because the city has invested considerable amount of time and energy in CDD to get moving on first source hiring and a variety of things that we've gotten no benefits from because all of this has come to a screeching halt. And so the issue that I'm concerned about is that we work on 2 planes and not send the motion to committee unless it's going to come right back to us, but it should be part of our strategy because we have people in the community today that are waiting for the jobs we've been priming them for, who are saying, oh, by the way, the jobs don't exist because FAA said no. 2 years ago, we kind of said that FAA may say that. And we took the word of a lot of people to say, get the city machinery moving in a direction to start getting people that were high-risk employees, getting people that were from the South Bay WIB and the South Los Angeles WIB. All those wheels are moving. And then we get to a point we draw a line and say, they said no. Well, I think that is totally unfair for all those who put the work and the effort. At a minimum, we should have a scaled-down program of the commitment of LAWA to where they then can construct what types of jobs that are eligible that they can approve without FAA's agreement and allow this process to move forward. And without that, we've wasted 2 years of our time. And maybe the airport could comment on that.
No, I agree. We share a similar frustration, William and I, the airport, the coalition have worked long and hard and honestly toward trying to find solutions to job programs. I certainly see as we move forward and take this issue to the FAA a second time, ideally get some better ideas. Maybe we could have worded our request better. We're not standing still at the airport on alternative measures. Now, short of a legal opinion that would prevent that, I don't see any reason with your proposal why we could not move out in those programs that have been authorized, as the executive director, frankly, already has, independent of that, with a internal reorganization, creating a new jobs shop in anticipation of having an alternative approach. So,
Could you list some of the jobs you have on your sheet there, the kinds of investments you're making in the job program already that we might be able to enhance and move forward with the 200,000 commitment to start getting some local hires into those opportunities?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I mentioned before that we have a internal employment program that is within the airport in a partnership with the airlines that really goes unadvertised, unnoticed, and was external to the discussions William Smart and I had. But we have vocational workers with our construction and maintenance division. We have the LAX ambassador program with our community relations division. We have a service guide, visitor service guide in the Bradley terminal, helping our international travelers. We have a jobs referral program headed by one of our employees, the Gateways internship program, and a broader citywide SNAP program, which is training office employees, trainees, interns at the airport. So it's not that as if we're strangers to jobs program. We're certainly not as good as CDD and the other professionals, but to answer your question directly, that is the area that we believe we can move out on, much as you have proposed, regardless of the outcome of our...
And that would be within your purview to spend LAWA money without FAA approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the issue is that as we move forward, all that machinery that's in place that's moved forward at South Bay, and the only ones I see that may be impacted would be and I don't have the right term, the at-risk that we're trying to hire may not be eligible for those kinds of jobs on the airport because they're going to have to be credentialed.
That's
and
correct.
so, but the issue of the rest of the machinery should not be held in abeyance while we're trying to work out FAA's decision and dilemma, particularly if you have the authority to make that decision and use LAWA money.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? Thank you for promoting our perspective on this, too, as we look at this nationally, too. I know this is of dear importance to many people. Mr. Parks, did you want to add one last thing?
Mr. Rosenthal, because of what Mr. Ritchie has said about the funding that's under their authority, we would like not to have this go to committee, but to go forward so we can get the city machinery moving on available jobs, that the city's machinery start moving people in that direction. And if they have the authority to spend the money and it's not inhibited by FAA's decision, what we'd like to do is move this motion attached to 44 today so that we can get all these things moving in that direction. Going to committee just continues to slow the process, and the CDD has moved a lot of people in position ready for this decision, and now they have to say there are no jobs, which is in many instances what people in some communities believe government does anyway. They get their hopes up and then deny them the opportunity.
Thank you. Just before we recognize Ms. Hahn and then Mr. Rosendahl, I'd like to recognize Mr. Cardenas just to introduce a new group of young people in the back. They look the same. But
I know, really.
I thought I had just introduced them, but it is a different class from Vina Elementary who's here visiting their city hall. We wanted to welcome you, Vina Elementary, fourth graders, and also I think it's a great opportunity for me to remind you that you have some wonderful alumni, kids who went to your school. My daughter Vanessa went to Vina Elementary, and she's graduating from college this weekend. So remember to follow her footsteps. That Vina is a great school to get a start in your education, and you'll be able to go to some wonderful universities. Keep your eye on the prize. Welcome to City Hall, Vina Elementary.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. I think the only problem I would have, Councilman Parks, with moving forward with the 200,000 is that the language says if the FAA program falls apart, then we will ask LAWA to spend the 200,000 annually on the jobs program. I think for me, and maybe the coalition has a different feeling, I think we're stronger case in moving forward on July 10th, going back there, pretty much still making the case that the right way to go is, the $3 million from LAWA for this jobs program. And I believe it sounds like you're still moving. Haven't come to a screeching halt. You're still doing your own sort of internal jobs training and marketing. And July 10th, and I don't know how quickly. It seems to me we'll be able to get a decision one way or the other fairly quickly after we make the case when we go back there. So I still feel like we would have a stronger case if we don't take that one piece of the document until they've absolutely said no again. Then I think we go to Plan B. But I think at this point we stick with Plan A. We're strong, we're united, we have the same voice that we want them to take another look at. And in fact, the $3 million is the right way to go. That's my opinion.
Mr. Rosendahl.
I'm sticking with it.
I agree with my colleague. What I like about Bernard Parks, he looks at the whole picture and he frankly sees the issues that we both see. But we just feel timing is everything at this particular point, and we don't want to just confuse the issue any further than it is. We want to go strong to Washington. We want to be clear with Washington. We obviously, as Jim Ritchie was saying, will do the groundwork on the other things, but to tie them together is just a little too much of a tie. My preference would be, with great respect to my colleague, Mr. Parks, because he is talking the right language, which is jobs and opportunities and training. Just hold off on that, send B back to committee, let us take A and the resolution back to Washington, and let's get some action from the FAA. And if things don't move in the direction we really want, well, then obviously we have this as part of the safety net going further. So I just wanted to react to both my colleagues, Mr. Parks and Janice Hahn, on this issue. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Parks?
Could you give us an idea how long it took a response on the original letter that we sent to FAA?
It was a couple months. There's certainly a couple strategies proposed.
2 months. It's 2 months. And we were just merely giving them our proposal. So our expectation now, we're asking them to agree to the proposal and overturn the local decision. We could be 2+ months down the road. And so, I mean, if we're willing to wait 2 months while people are in line, and again, CDD has done at least a year's worth of work on this program and not put one person in the system. And so that's a real dilemma of promising people employment. Reverend Smart, you may have a comment.
Councilman, I agree with all that's being said.
Can't agree with everybody because you're saying something
if we were being specific, I think what we can see if LAWA can do, ensure that those jobs on the south runway, once that construction starts the end of the month of July, decision or no decision, that some apparatus needs to be in place where people from the project impacted area will have some type of preference to the training and getting those jobs. As you know from Joe Rosan's report from CDD, APS, another organization, the First Source project is already working. They just got some 27 jobs. Of those, 12 went to project impacted area. About 5 of them went to CD8, and the others, and some others went other places in the project impact area. But that south runway is going to start, and that's where specifically LAWA need, and I'm not just saying this, I'm not saying contradicting anything, I'm just saying LAWA needs to put in place a process where people from LA the project, the impact area can get those jobs.
And again, I appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly what I'm saying, is that if you're saying these jobs start in July, we will not hear from FAA until later in the year. There will be no process for July, and that's what, $3 billion that we're talking about on how much on the runways?
No, the runway's about 280, 300 million. The 3 big projects we have underway is about 1.2 billion. But I would add that we have, despite lack of an agreement, despite the lack of formality, we've had a very favorable response from the contractor on the south runway to implement, absent approval, the concept of first source hiring, local hiring. So while we're faced with this formal roadblock, we're not sitting still.
But I think the dilemma I have is that a couple of these locations that we identified for the source hiring, if they're not part of the process, then we've defeated our purpose again, because we've geared people up saying this is going to happen. And now if they don't happen and we keep building the runway, and then it's now $2 billion and then we're $3 billion, pretty soon we're a third through the project and we haven't quite gotten our process in order. And so again, if there's a sense of the committee that they want to go directly with this clean slate, on the other hand, we could be 3 months down the road and not $1 into these work source centers, and Reverend Smart will be back here saying we got to have a process. Well, if we defeat ourselves by not putting forth the process, we could be well into the runways being completed and miss that opportunity.
Councilman, I think there is a way, these two different strategies.
Explain it to us then.
Okay, if this resolution, we need to send a clear message to the FAA that we are together and we expect them to change that, number one.
Okay.
On a concurrent strategy is that working within with those organizations that are already contracted with the city to ensure, and working as Lauer and the mayor's office and some council reps are meeting with Tudor Saliba to ensure that that process takes place, to put the pressure on Tudor Saliba and all the others to ensure that they hire on that south runway people from the impacted area. That's what.
Okay, let me just, my final remark. I've seen this city for 40 years send clear messages, and people have ignored most of them. I've also seen people say, let's best effort and put pressure on, and today in 2006, we're still saying people should get their fair share. So I don't know if those are good strategies, because obviously when we send those clear messages to Washington, they don't have to listen. And what we're asking them to do, I think, is almost monumental, to ask them to overturn a decision that appears to be well documented by their local agency, to tell them that they were wrong and to buy our argument. That is something I've not seen the federal government willing to do. And the fact that they're farther away from us than the local agency, they have less inclination to be supportive of our position. So the other issue is the pressure on the developer or the contractor. We wouldn't be here in 2006 talking about fair share if pressure had worked over the last 4 or 5 decades. So I will acquiesce and send it to committee, but on the other hand, I have a feeling, because I think I was sitting over there when I said this CBA, if we don't know what FAA is going to do, why are we approving it? 2 years later, we're right where we said we're going to be. 3 months from now, people will be without jobs, airport's going to build a runway, and we'll be still sending messages. So we'll go with the committee chair and acquiesce on that. But again, if we're just dealing with jobs, just remember, okay?
Nobody else is on the speaker queue, so if there's no objection, is there a part to vote on as well? Send part back to committee, Mr. Clerk?
If council wants to formally do that, they can. 44B, there was a motion by Mr. Rosendahl, seconded by Ms. Hahn, to send that to committee.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and open the roll on that? Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay. That will be the action ordered. Thank you.
And then vote on 44 as amended by A.
Absolutely. We have 44. Any objection to A? If not, that'll be accepted as friendly amendment. Mr. Parks?
Could we just get a timeline of when we'd expect some response if the FAA doesn't respond? When, are you going back in July? Okay. So if we can get some update then. Okay.
All right, if we can open our roll on 44 as amended by A. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved as well. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Next item, please.
Item 55 was called special by Councilmember Rosendahl.
We've done that too much.
Mr. Rosendahl, item number 55.
But that's exactly what happened. We stood.
Mr. President, members of the City Council, this is the first time I've ever asked for us to get involved in a homicide, and it's a $50,000 reward motion. I must tell you, I've been engaged in this issue ever since last Monday at 3:04 in the afternoon when a young man by the name of Augustine Contreras was gunned down in the parking lot at Venice High School. Yesterday, I went to the funeral. Hundreds and hundreds of people were there, all from basically the community that this young man came from, the Mar Vista Gardens and Del Rey and Mar Vista area, a large Latino community. The Mass was in Spanish. Then afterwards, I went to Venice High School, where parents and administration were talking about safety measures. Over 30 people witnessed the murder, and no one has come forward. There's a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear in the community around this shooting that took place in that parking lot. We hope by posting a reward for $50,000, it can break the code of silence, that parents can talk to their children in the privacy of their love relationship and find out more about what happened. We have a very intense situation in Del Rey and in Oakwood right now over this situation. And when I spoke at the eulogy at the church, I made it very clear that retribution or tit for tat, we don't need another mother and father grieving over their son. So we're wanting to catch the murderer as quickly as possible and give the community a sense of safety and see that there is no retaliation between this group and that group that could escalate as this summer moves forward. We have real issues there, and I would like very much the unanimous support of my colleagues in posting this $50,000 reward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Does anybody else wish to be heard on this item? If not, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. We'll send that forthwith. Yeah, Mr. Rosendahl?
Spell his name properly on the motion.
Okay, great.
Okay,
We'll
thank
make
you.
sure the clerk has that. Thank you. The other items are closed session? Mr.
That
Clerk?
leaves closed session items.
Okay. Pursuant to California state law, we will now go into executive session, or known as closed session here, to discuss legal matters before the city. Any actions that we need to announce publicly, we will do so in open session following our deliberations. Thank you very much, and we'll be back after our closed session.
Holiday today, as is every 14th day of June, Flag Day.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Just an anecdotal comment on that. When I was a high school reporter, Cub, I was at the White House, and President Lyndon Baines Johnson was signing a proclamation for Flag Day. He came with a pen to hand it to the lady next to me. I thought he was giving it to me. He tripped, I fell on top of the President of the United States. It was a hoot. I'll always remember that. Thank you.
What did the Beagles? You know, Johnson had those dogs, you know.
Well, the big story was the Secret Service just came running
Come
over
right
to
at
us
you.
as the President of the United States and I are on the Rose Garden lawn.
Yeah, that's great.
Those little things,
Good
Tommy.
story. I like that,
Those
Bill.
little things.
Good, We'll remember that one.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Never the same.
Yes, Mr. Parks?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of announcements. Today, the Southwest Station at Dinker and King Boulevard, they're having a charity barbecue in honor and raising money for Officer Christina Repetti, recently injured as a result of being shot in Southwest area. That event will go on today from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and we'll be right in the parking lot, and that street will be blocked off on Dinker and LaSalle. And we'd encourage anyone from the public to drop by and assist in that fundraising effort. Also on June 17th and 18th, in Lamert Park in the Vision Theater parking lot at 3341 West 43rd Place. There's going to be a jazz and blues concert on both days, and we'd encourage the public to come out and enjoy Lamert Park on the June 17th and 18th. Both events start at 1 p.m. Also, our Chamber of Commerce in the 8th District Crenshaw Chamber, their meeting is tomorrow, June 15th, 8 a.m. at the Crenshaw Plaza Community Room in the Baldwin Hills Shopping Center. And the final one is that Recycling Black Dollars event will be Friday, June 16th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Westin Hotel at LAX, and it's their annual program. This year's theme is Masters of Publishing Annual Luncheon.
Other announcements, colleagues? Seeing no announcements. Any adjourning motions? Yes. If I can ask everybody in council chambers to please rise for adjourning motions. Mr. Smith, if I can ask you to rise for adjourning motions, please. Okay. Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, ask that we adjourn in memory of Roland Seidler, Jr., founder of a major Los Angeles investment banking and financial services firm. He also served as a member of the board of directors of the Los Angeles Dodgers from 1975 to 1998. He was brother-in-law, very close friend, and business associate of another good friend of the city, Peter O'Malley. He was a native of Los Angeles and a graduate of Loyola High School and the University of California, Berkeley. He went on to serve in the Army Intelligence Corps before entering the business world. He was not only a successful businessman, but a true leader in Los Angeles. He contributed his time and business acumen to many educational institutions, including Loyola Marymount University, UCLA, the Los Angeles Archdiocese, and Town Hall Los Angeles. Our sincere condolences go out to his friends and family.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Other adjourning motions, colleagues? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned, and we will next be in session this Friday on June 16th, 2006. And that meeting will be here in City Hall, John Ferraro Council Chambers. Thank you. Have a great day.